My name is Pat, and this is the story of how my ordinary life unraveled into a waking nightmare. I live in a modest house tucked into a neighborhood where nothing ever happens. It's the kind of place where kids ride bikes until dusk, and neighbors wave from porches. My office is a small upstairs room, my desk pressed against a window that overlooks the front yard. I work from home, my days filled with spreadsheets and video calls. In early fall, when the air carries a crisp promise of change, I keep that window open, letting the breeze weave through my thoughts. The view, a stretch of lawn, the driveway, the sleepy street beyond, feels like an extension of my sanctuary. But sanctuary is a lie when someone's watching. It was a Tuesday, the kind of unremarkable day that blends into the next. Around noon, sunlight spilled across my desk, warming my hands as I typed. A flicker of movement caught my eye outside. I leaned toward the window, squinting. At the end of my driveway stood a man, not passing by, not checking his phone or tying a shoe, just standing, his body angled toward my house. His face was indistinct, shadowed by a hood, but his posture was deliberate, like a statue carved to face me. My pulse quickened, a primal instinct whispering that this wasn't right. I stared, waiting for him to move. Feel the weight of his gaze, Pat. It's not your imagination. After a few heartbeats, he turned and walked away, his steps unhurried, vanishing around the corner. I shook it off, telling myself it was nothing. A neighbor I didn't recognize, a delivery driver scoping addresses. But the unease lingered, a cold pebble in my gut. The next day, I buried myself in work, my screen a fortress against stray thoughts. Video calls stacked my schedule, voices buzzing through my headset. During a lull in one meeting, my eyes drifted to the window. There he was again, same spot, same rigid stance. His head tilted upward as if memorizing every detail of my house. My breath caught, a shiver crawling up my spine. This wasn't a coincidence. The room seemed to tilt, the chatter of my colleagues fading into a dull hum. One of them, noticing my distraction, asked if I was okay. I forced a smile, muttering something vague, but my eyes kept darting to the figure below. He stood for a minute, maybe two, then turned and left, as if he'd seen enough. He knows you're watching, Pat. He wants you to know. The rest of the day dragged, each tick of the clock heavy with dread. I couldn't focus, my mind replaying his silhouette, the way he seemed to belong to the shadows. After work, I stepped outside, the evening air cool against my skin. I paced the driveway, searching for a reason, any reason for his fixation. A loose shingle? A forgotten package? Nothing. The lawn was tidy, the house unremarkable. But standing where he had, I looked up and saw my office window, a clear frame around my desk. He could see me. Every keystroke, every glance. You're exposed, Pat. He's been studying you. My stomach churned. Back inside, I cooked dinner. The clatter of pans a feeble distraction. Over a call with my brother that night, I spilled the story. He listened, his voice calm, rational. Probably just some weirdo, he said. Don't overthink it. I wanted to believe him, but the words felt hollow, like trying to patch a sinking ship with paper. Later, I sank into the couch, the TV's glow casting flickering shapes across the room. I turned the volume low, my eyelids heavy, hoping to drown out the day's tension. Around 9 p.m., the house was quiet, save for the hum of the refrigerator. Then a sound pierced the stillness, soft, deliberate footsteps crunching on the gravel, outside. My body froze, every nerve electrified. Listen, Pat, that's not the wind. The steps approached the front door, paused, then retreated. I bolted upright, my heart hammering. Creeping to the door, I pressed my eye to the peephole. A faint figure moved down the street, swallowed by the night. My hand trembled as I opened the door. Taped to the wood was a scrap of paper, the handwriting, all jagged. "Pat, answer the door." The world spun. How does he know my name? My name, scrawled like a taunt, turned my home into a cage. I stumbled back, clutching the note, its edges biting into my palm. This wasn't random. This was personal. My fingers fumbled for my phone, dialing the police. 2 officers arrived, their faces professional but weary. I poured out the story, the man, the note, the footsteps. They took the note, jotted down my words, but their response was maddeningly vague. "We'll keep an eye out," one said. "Call if anything else happens." They left and the house felt emptier, its walls too thin to hold back the dark. "You're alone now, Pat. He's still out there." Sleep was impossible. I lay in bed, the silence pressing against my ears. Every creak of the house was a threat, every shadow a figure waiting to step forward. I stared at the ceiling, the note's words looping in my mind. Answer the door. Why? What did he want? The clock ticked toward 2 a.m., each second a countdown to something I couldn't name. Then it came, a knock at the front door, sharp and deliberate. My body went rigid, the air too thick to breathe. He's here. Another knock, steady, unhurried. The rhythm was unnatural, like a heartbeat from another world. I grabbed my phone, hands shaking, and dialed 911. The operator's voice was calm, but the knocks continued, echoing through the house. "Don't move, Pat. Don't let him know you're awake." They didn't rush, didn't falter. Just the same, measured taps over and over, as if he had all the time in the world. The operator said officers were 2 minutes away. I clung to that promise, my eyes fixed on the door. A longer pause stretched between knocks. 15 seconds, 30, a minute. Silence smothered the house, more terrifying than the sound. When the police arrived, their flashlights swept the porch. Empty. No man, no note, no trace. I recounted the night, my voice cracking, but the officers' faces were skeptical. "We'll patrol the area," they said, more serious this time, but still powerless. They left, and the house swallowed me again. Weeks passed. The man never returned, or so I told myself. The police patrols faded and life resumed its rhythm. But nothing was the same. Feel the weight of his absence, Pat. Is he really gone? I stopped opening the window, the breeze now a reminder of vulnerability. I checked the locks obsessively, my eyes scanning the street for a hooded figure. The note, now tucked in a drawer, was a scar I couldn't erase. Its words haunted me. Answer the door. What if I had? What waited on the other side? I told myself stories to cope. Maybe he was a drifter, a prankster, someone who moved on. But deep down, I knew better. He's still out there, Pat, watching from a distance you can't see. The thought clawed at me, a shadow that followed me through every quiet moment. My home, once a haven, was now a stage, and I was the unwitting actor in a play I didn't understand. I don't know who he was, what he wanted, or if he'll ever return. But every night, as I lie in the dark, I listen for the sound of footsteps, for the knock that might come again. And when it does, Pat, will you answer? The morning mist clung to the trees like a fading dream, whispering secrets I wasn't ready to hear. I was a freshman in high school, living in a small, forgotten town where time seemed to stand still. My home sat deep in the woods, surrounded by towering pines and tangled undergrowth. There was no proper road, no driveway, just a narrow dirt trail snaking through the forest, barely wide enough for my footsteps. Every day I walked that path to school, the crunch of leaves under my sneakers blending with the soft calls of morning birds. It was my routine, my rhythm, a quiet start to the day that felt safe, almost sacred. But that morning something shifted, like a shadow moving just beyond my sight. The trail was my world, a private thread connecting my house to the rest of existence. My parents had carved out this life in the wilderness, building our home with sweat and stubborn pride. Dad always said it was his legacy, a place where we could breathe free. But freedom came with solitude, and the trail was a reminder of how far we were from anyone else. No school bus rolled up to our door. I'd either trek a mile to my friend's place for a ride, or walk the full distance to school. Most days, I chose the walk, savoring the stillness, the way the forest seemed to hold its breath as I passed. That morning was no different, or so I thought. The air was crisp, the sky a pale gray, and I was lost in the rhythm of my steps when a glint caught my eye. A car, parked right on the trail where no car should be. It wasn't my parents' truck nor any neighbors I recognized. The trail led only to our house, a dead end swallowed by trees. Seeing a vehicle there was like finding a stranger in your bedroom. Wrong, invasive. My stomach tightened as I slowed my pace, squinting through the mist. The car was old, its paint chipped and faded, windows smudged with grime. Inside sat a woman, her silhouette sharp against the dim interior. She looked older, maybe in her late 30s, with dark, unkempt hair spilling over her shoulders. Her face was pale, almost ghostly, with deep shadows under her eyes, like she hadn't slept in days. Her gaze locked onto me, unblinking, and I felt it, like a cold hand brushing my spine. I dropped my eyes, focusing on the dirt beneath my feet, but her stare burned into me as I passed. My steps quickened, heart thudding, until I was clear of the car and the trail opened up again. I didn't look back, but I could feel her watching, her presence lingering like a bad dream. That night at dinner, I couldn't shake the image of her face. I mentioned the car to my parents, expecting them to brush it off. Just some lost driver, I said, half hoping they'd agree. But their faces changed. Mom's fork froze mid-air. Dad's jaw tightened. Their eyes met, a silent conversation I wasn't part of. They told me not to worry, that she'd probably taken a wrong turn, but their voices were too calm, too forced. I saw the fear in their glances, the way they avoided my questions. The next morning, Dad insisted on driving me to school, even though he had to be at work by 6 a.m. For the entire week, they took turns chauffeuring me, rearranging their schedules without explanation. I argued I was old enough to walk, that they were overreacting, but deep down I was relieved. The trail didn't feel safe anymore. It was as if the forest itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to break. A week passed, and the car didn't return. My parents' tension eased, their smiles less strained. I convinced myself it was nothing, a one-time oddity. On Monday, I slung my backpack over my shoulder and set out on the trail again, the morning air sharp with pine. And dew. The forest was alive with familiar sounds, birds chirping, leaves rustling in the breeze. I felt foolish for ever being scared. The trail was mine again, my sanctuary. But then I saw it. The same car, parked in the exact same spot. A dark stain against the green. My heart lurched, a cold sweat prickling my skin. She was there, sitting in the driver's seat, her head tilted toward me. Those eyes, heavy and hollow, pinned me in place. This wasn't a coincidence. She was waiting for me, had been waiting all along. Her gaze wasn't just watching, it was claiming me, pulling me into a void I couldn't escape. Panic clawed at my chest. I couldn't walk past her again. Couldn't feel that stare boring into me. I veered off the trail, cutting through the underbrush, branches snagging at my clothes. The forest closed around me, shadows pooling under the trees. I thought I'd outsmarted her, that the woods would shield me. But then I heard it, the low hum of an engine, tires crunching over dirt. She'd started the car, was driving closer, tracking me through the trees. My breath hitched, legs pumping faster. I glanced back and saw her silhouette through the window, her face expressionless, almost lifeless. The car stopped, and a door opened. Footsteps followed, deliberate and unhurried, snapping twigs and crushing leaves. She was coming for me, and the forest was no longer my ally. I froze, my back against a tree, heart hammering so loud I was sure she could hear it. Then her voice cut through the silence, soft and chilling, calling my full name. It wasn't a shout, but a caress, like a mother soothing a child. The sound wrapped around me, warm yet terrifying, pulling me into a trance where time slowed. I turned, unable to stop myself, and saw her standing just beyond the trees. Her face was a mask, blank, pale, with eyes that seemed to see through me. "Come here," she said, her voice a siren song, promising safety while reeking of danger. My body wanted to obey, to step toward her, but my mind screamed to run. I broke the spell, sprinting deeper into the woods, branches whipping my face. Her footsteps faded, but her voice echoed in my head, looping endlessly. I circled back to the house, lungs burning, and locked the door behind me. My hands shook as I dialed my parents, words tumbling out in a frantic rush. They rushed home, faces pale, and called the police. But what they told me next shattered any sense of safety I had left. The woman was my dad's ex-wife, a ghost from nearly 20 years ago. She'd been unstable even then, plagued by episodes where she'd fixate on something, or someone, with a terrifying obsession. My parents had suspected her the moment I mentioned the car, had reported her to the police that first night. But the officers found her at home, calm and composed, claiming innocence. She'd been watching us, studying our routines, knowing exactly when I'd be alone on that trail. The police did nothing more, said there was no proof, no crime. My parents wouldn't tell me what she wanted, if she'd spoken of me, or why she'd called my name like she owned it. Her absence now felt more dangerous than her presence, a shadow waiting to return. The trail is still there, winding through the woods, but I don't walk it anymore. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig feels like her footsteps. I see her eyes in my dreams, hear her voice calling my name, and wonder if she's still out there, waiting for the day I step back onto that path. The forest was once my refuge, but now it's her domain, a place where reality blurs into nightmare. I don't know what she planned or if she'll ever come back, but some part of me knows she's not gone, not really. The air felt wrong that night, like the world was holding its breath, waiting for something to snap. In 2019, I was just another face behind the counter at a small grocery store, working late shifts to pay for my one-bedroom apartment. The store sat on the edge of town, where neon lights flickered against cracked pavement and the hum of fluorescent bulbs drowned out the quiet. I liked the routine: scan, bag, smile, repeat. It was predictable, safe. But safety, I learned, is just an illusion we cling to until it shatters. The regulars were part of the rhythm. Old Mrs. Carter with her coupons, the night shift nurses grabbing energy drinks, and him. He came in a few times a week, always just before closing when the store was nearly empty. A tall man, maybe in his 40s, with a face that looked like it hadn't smiled in years. His eyes were heavy, shadowed, like he carried a weight I couldn't see. He'd buy random things, a loaf of bread, a single apple, never speaking beyond a mumbled thanks. I didn't know his name, but the other cashiers called him Last Minute Guy. Nobody liked him. Not because he was rude, but because he lingered. His presence like a cold draft you couldn't shake. That night, the clock ticked slower, each second stretching into eternity. It was a Tuesday, the kind of mundane evening where nothing should happen. The store was dead. The aisles, silent except for the faint buzz of a dying light. I was wiping down the counter, counting the minutes until I could lock up when the bell above the door jingled. I looked up, and there he was, last-minute guy, his coat damp from the drizzle outside. His boots left wet smudges on the floor, and his eyes flicked toward me, then away, like he was studying something just beyond my shoulder. I scanned his items, a can of soup, a pack of gum, my fingers moving on autopilot. "Evening," I said, forcing a smile. He nodded, barely, audible, and handed me crumpled bills. As he left, I felt a prickle on my neck like the air had shifted, grown heavier. I shook it off. Just another night, I told myself. 10 minutes later, I locked the register, flipped the closed sign, and stepped into the parking lot. The air was thick with mist, the streetlights casting hazy halos. My car was parked at the far end under a flickering lamp. As I walked, my sneakers scuffed against the asphalt, the sound too loud in the stillness. That's when I saw him. Last-minute guy standing by his car, motionless, staring at the store. His hands hung at his sides, unnaturally still, like a statue carved from shadow. The drizzle clung to his hair, but he didn't move to wipe it away. My stomach twisted. Why was he still here? I hurried to my car, my keys jingling in my trembling hand, and locked the doors the second I was inside. Through the windshield, I watched him. He didn't move, didn't blink, just stood there, his gaze fixed on the store. Or maybe on me. I started the engine and pulled out, my heart thudding against my ribs. In the rearview mirror, his silhouette faded into the mist. Back at my apartment, I tried to shake the unease. The drive home had been a blur, my mind replaying that moment in the parking lot. Why was he just standing there? My apartment was my sanctuary, a small space with creaky floors and mismatched furniture. But it was mine. I locked the door, checked twice, and sank onto the couch. The TV flickered, some late-night rerun I wasn't really watching. I told myself I was overreacting. People linger sometimes. Maybe he was waiting for someone, or lost in thought. But the prickle on my neck wouldn't fade, like a whisper I couldn't quite hear. I stayed up later than usual, too wired to sleep. It was past midnight when I finally dragged myself to bed, the apartment quiet except for the hum of the fridge. I left the bedside lamp on, a habit from childhood I'd never shaken. As I pulled the covers over me, a memory surfaced. A story my mom used to tell about a neighbor who swore someone watched her through her window every night. She'd laughed it off until she found footprints in her yard. I pushed the thought away. This is different. You're safe. The lamp cast soft shadows on the walls, and I closed my eyes, willing sleep to come. Then a light pierced the darkness, sharp and blinding. My eyes snapped open. A beam cut through the window, slicing across my bedroom like a blade. I froze. My breath caught in my throat. It was headlights, I told myself, maybe a neighbor pulling in, but the light lingered unmoving, pinning me to the bed. My heart pounded, each beat loud enough to drown out the silence. Then, as suddenly as it appeared, the light vanished. The room plunged back into dimness, the lamp's glow weak and flickering. I lay there, straining to hear something, anything. A car engine, footsteps, a door closing. Nothing, just the oppressive quiet pressing against my eardrums. I forced myself to breathe, to move. It was nothing, I repeated, a mantra to keep the panic at bay. I drifted into an uneasy sleep, the kind where dreams blur with reality. Something woke me, a sound that didn't belong. I jolted upright, my heart racing before my mind could catch up. The room was dark, the lamp still on but weaker, like it was struggling to stay lit. I fumbled for my phone on the nightstand, my fingers clumsy. The screen was blank, no calls, no notifications. But I'd heard something, hadn't I? A ring, sharp and insistent, like my phone vibrating against wood. I rubbed my eyes, trying to shake the fog of sleep. That's when I saw it. The bedroom door, always closed tight, was ajar. Not wide open, just a sliver. The gap barely wide enough to let in the darkness from the hallway. My stomach dropped. I never left it open. Never. I slid out of bed, my bare feet cold against the floor. The air felt thick, like it was holding its breath again. I reached for the door, my hand trembling, and pushed it shut. It latched smoothly, no resistance, no creak. It wasn't stuck. Someone opened it. My mind raced, grasping for explanations. A draft? A faulty hinge? But deep down, I knew better. The light from earlier, the man in the parking lot. It was all connected, a thread pulling tighter around me. I backed away from the door, my eyes darting to the window. The blinds were half open, the street outside shrouded in mist. I crept closer, my pulse hammering in my ears, and peeked through the slats. A car sat in my driveway, its rear half barely visible, swallowed by the fog. My breath hitched. It wasn't mine. Panic clawed at my chest. I needed to call someone. Anyone. I turned toward the nightstand, my phone a lifeline in the chaos. But as I took a step, something moved in the corner of my vision. His shadow, quick and deliberate in the closet. I froze, my body screaming to run, but my legs rooted to the floor. Slowly, I turned my head, praying it was a trick of the light. An eye stared back at me, glinting through the crack in the closet door. It was human, unblinking, locked on mine. My knees buckled, a gasp tearing from my throat. The world tilted, dream and reality collapsing into one. I didn't think. I ran. My feet pounded against the floor, the hallway a blur as I sprinted for the front door. The eye burned into my mind, a predator's gaze, patient and hungry. I fumbled. With the lock, my hand slick with sweat, and burst outside. The cold air hit me like a slap, the mist swallowing me as I stumbled down the steps. I didn't stop until I reached a neighbor's house, banging on their door until lights flickered on inside. They let me in, their faces a mix of confusion and concern, and called the police while I sat on their couch, trembling, unable to speak. The police arrived quickly, their flashlights cutting through the fog. The car in my driveway was still there, a beat-up sedan I didn't recognize. But the apartment was empty. No sign of the man, no trace of the eye in the closet. The officers searched every inch, their radios crackling in the silence. They found nothing. No fingerprints, no forced entry. Just my open bedroom door and the blinds I'd left askew. They tracked the car to him, last-minute guy, the man from the store. He'd been watching me for weeks, they said, his mind unraveling in ways they couldn't explain. His reasons were a jumbled mess, a mix of obsession and delusion. They arrested him, but it didn't erase the truth. He'd been in my home, inches. From me, while I slept, I moved out the next week, unable to step foot in that apartment again. The memory of that eye haunts me, a reminder that safety is fragile, that monsters don't always hide in the dark. They walk into your store, buy your gum, and follow you home. Every night, I check my doors, my windows, my closets, but I know it's not enough. Because once you've seen that eye, you never stop feeling it, watching, waiting, just out of sight. You're working alone in a deserted bowling alley, snow piling outside, thinking it's just another slow night. Then you find photos of you taken hours ago by someone who was close enough to see your every move. I'm just a regular person, working a dead-end job in a small town. This is the story of the night I realized I wasn't as alone as I thought. The bowling alley was a rundown spot on the edge of town, the kind of place you'd miss if you blinked. Its neon sign buzzed faintly, half the letters dark, and the walls sagged like they were tired of standing. It was open 24/7, mostly for the late-night crowd. Kids sneaking beers, old guys nursing grudges over bad throws. I worked the overnight shift, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., which suited me fine. I liked the quiet, the way the world seemed to pause. But that night in December, a blizzard rolled in, fierce and unforgiving. Feel the storm closing in, cutting you off. Snow buried the parking lot, the roads empty, the world outside reduced to a white blur. No one was coming, not in this weather. I started my shift like always, wiping down the lanes, the smell of polish sharp in my nose. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting a cold glow over the scuffed wood. I cleaned all but one lane, a habit in case some fool showed up to bowl. By midnight, with no customers, I gave up. The storm was too much. I dragged a chair to the front window, its metal legs scraping the floor, and sat, staring out. Snow fell in thick sheets, piling. Against the glass, the streetlights barely visible. My breath fogged the window, my reflection pale and tired. Look outside. Is it really empty? I leaned back, the chair creaking, letting the monotony wash over me. The alley was silent, just the low drone of the heater and the wind's faint howl. Around 1 a.m., a sound jolted me upright. A heavy thump echoed from the back of the building where the lanes met the machinery. My heart skipped, a cold prickle running down my neck. Hear that? It's not the wind. I stood straining to listen. The alley was still, but the sound lingered. In my mind, sharp and out of place. Maybe something fell, a spare pin, a tool left loose. But the back room wasn't a place I liked. It was a long hallway, dim and cluttered, full of old equipment and shadows. I grabbed a flashlight from under the counter, its beam thin but steady, and headed to the door. My hand paused on the knob, the metal cold against my palm. Go check. You can't ignore it. I pushed the door open, the hinges silent, and stepped inside. The hallway was darker than I expected, the air heavy with dust and grease. My flashlight swept the floor, picking out cracked tiles and tangled wires. Then I saw it. Water. Pooling. Small patches forming a trail of footprints down the hall. My stomach dropped. Someone's been here. The prints were fresh, the edges clear, like they just walked through. My mouth went dry, my pulse loud in my ears. I called out, my voice shaky. Hey, is anyone there? No answer, just the echo of my words. I moved forward, each step deliberate, the flashlight trembling in my grip. The beam caught something on the wall, a white envelope taped to the concrete glaring in the dark. My hand shook as I pulled it down, the tape tearing with a soft rip. Inside were photos, Polaroids, their glossy surfaces cold against my fingers. I held the first one up, my breath catching. It was me, earlier that night wiping down a lane, my back to the camera. The second showed me walking to the counter, my face half lit by the lights. The third was worse, me sitting by the window, staring out, the shot so close I could see the frayed edge of my sleeve. He was right there, watching you. My legs wobbled, the photos slipping to the floor, scattering across the tiles. My chest tightened, a scream trapped inside. Someone had been here, close enough to see every detail, capturing me like I was prey. The hallway felt alive, the shadows shifting, waiting. Run. Get out. I stumbled back, flashlight beam jerking, and sprinted to the front desk. My hands fumbled for the phone, dialing 911. the operator's voice a distant anchor. I could barely speak, the words tumbling out. Someone was here. They took pictures, they were watching me. The alley felt like a cage. I couldn't stay, not with those photos burning in my mind. I grabbed my jacket, the fabric heavy with cold, and ran outside. Snow stung my face, the wind biting as I fought to my car. The parking lot was empty, the blizzard swallowing any trace of whoever had been there. I locked the doors, my breath fogging the windows, and watched the alley's entrance, half expecting a figure to appear. He could still be out there. Police arrived in minutes, their lights cutting through the snow. I led them inside, showing them the photos, my voice cracking as I explained. They searched the hallway, their flashlight sweeping the dark, but found nothing. No footprints, no envelope, no sign of anyone. The alley had no cameras, no way to prove what happened. They took the photos, wrote down my story, and told me to call if anything else happened. I nodded, but their words felt empty. I drove home that night, the road invisible under the snow. Those Polaroids seared into my memory. I quit the job a few months later, unable to walk those lanes without feeling eyes on me. The bowling alley, shut down soon after, its doors locked, its sign dark. I tried to tell myself it was a prank, some kid messing around. But at night, when the house is quiet, I feel it. The weight of being watched, the chill of knowing someone was there, holding those moments of me. He's still out there, somewhere, with those pictures. I check my windows, lock my doors, but the fear doesn't fade. Who was he? Why me? The questions haunt me, unanswered like footsteps in the dark. And what if he's waiting for another night? The road stretched into the night like a ribbon of forgotten dreams, swallowed by shadows that whispered of things best left unseen. I was driving home from my friend's place, an hour-long trek through the desolate farmlands that sprawled between his remote house and my own. It was somewhere past 1 a.m., maybe closer to 2, the kind of hour where the world feels like it's holding its breath. My eyes burned with exhaustion, lids heavy from a long night of laughter and too many beers I hadn't drunk but felt like I had. I should have stayed over, curled up on his couch, but work loomed like a guillotine and I couldn't afford to miss it. The radio hummed low, a faint pulse of music fighting to keep me awake, while the headlights carved a narrow path through the dark, illuminating endless rows of corn swaying in the breeze. The road was mine alone, or so it seemed. No other cars, no streetlights, just the rhythmic hum of my tires and the occasional flutter of moths caught in the beams. My mind drifted, lulled by the monotony, half dreaming of sleep, when something jolted me awake. A shape in the road, stark and impossible, like a nightmare given form. I stomped the brake, my car lurching as my heart slammed against my ribs. There, in the center of the lane, stood a suitcase, not lying flat, not tumbled from some truck, but upright, as if placed with care. Its dark surface gleamed under my headlights, edges sharp against the asphalt. Who leaves a suitcase in the middle of nowhere, standing like it's waiting for someone? I sat frozen, staring, my breath shallow. It was absurd, yet something about it felt wrong, like a puzzle piece, forced into the wrong slot. I shook my head, muttered about careless drivers, and eased into the oncoming lane, steering wide to avoid it. The suitcase watched me pass, silent and unmoving, its presence lingering in my rearview mirror until the darkness claimed it. I drove on, the incident gnawing at me. Maybe it fell off a truck, landed just right. Maybe. But the explanation felt hollow, like a lie I was telling myself. The radio crackled, the song fading into static, and I turned it off, preferring the silence. The fields stretched endlessly, their shadows deeper now, as if the night had thickened. 5 minutes later, My headlights caught another anomaly. A truck parked dead center in the road, its bulk a silent threat. No lights, no hazard signals, just a hulking mass of metal blocking my path. I slowed to a stop, my high beams washing over its dented frame. Scratches marred its side, jagged and fresh, like wounds from a recent fight. I leaned on the horn. The sound sharpened the stillness, but the truck didn't budge. No one stirred inside. The windows were black voids, reflecting nothing. Where's the driver? Why leave it here in the middle of nowhere? My pulse quickened, a prickle of unease, crawling up my neck. I waited, counting seconds, then eased around it, my tires hugging the edge of the road. As I passed, I strained to see inside, but the cab was empty. No silhouette, no movement, just a ghost of a vehicle, abandoned in the night. Back on my side of the road, I accelerated, the truck shrinking in my mirror. 2 strange things in 10 minutes. What are the odds? The suitcase and the truck felt connected, like pieces of a story I didn't want to read. The farmland pressed closer, corn stalks looming like silent sentinels, their leaves rustling secrets I couldn't decipher. I gripped the wheel tighter, my tiredness replaced by a sharp alertness, every shadow a potential threat. Then it happened again, a figure in the road, arms waving, forcing me to stop. My brakes squealed as I halted, my headlights pinning him in place. He was a man, early 40s, his clothes rumpled, hair wild. Cuts and scrapes crisscrossed his hands, glistening wetly in the light. His face was gaunt, eyes too bright, like a fever burned behind them. He smiled, a crooked, unnatural grin that didn't reach those eyes, and my stomach twisted. "Hey," he said, sauntering to my window, his voice rough but oddly cheerful. "You see a truck back there?" I nodded, my throat dry. "Yeah, I did?" He leaned closer, his breath fogging the glass. "Mind giving me a lift to it? Ran out of gas, you know, heading to a station." His words sounded rehearsed, like lines from a play he'd performed before. I hesitated, my mind racing. Why was he walking away from his truck? Why ask for a ride back instead of to a gas station? I opened my mouth to question him, but his eyes held mine, unblinking, urging me to agree, to stop thinking. "Just say yes," his gaze seemed to command, "and let this be easy." I fumbled for an excuse, my voice unsteady, when my eyes drifted past him. Something glinted in the cornfield, a sliver of metal catching my headlights. The rear of a car half buried in the crops, its tail light winking like a dying star. My blood ran cold. That wasn't a parked car. It was hidden, deliberately concealed. This isn't right. This is a trap. The realization hit like a physical blow. I yanked the window up, my hands shaking, and the man's smile vanished. His face contorted, eyes wide with rage, and he pounded on the glass, shouting words I couldn't hear over my pounding heart. I floored the gas, the car surging forward, tires screeching as I swerved around him. He lunged, his fingers grazing the door, but I was gone, speeding into the night. My phone was in my hand before I knew it, dialing 911, my voice trembling as I spilled the story to the operator. The suitcase, the truck, the man, the car in the field. None of it was random. The police arrived too late. The truck was gone, the man vanished, but they found the car in the corn. The driver was dead, not from a crash, but from violence. His life stolen by the man who'd stood at my window, smiling like he hadn't just taken a life. They told me the suitcase was likely a lure, placed to make drivers stop, to make them vulnerable. The man had played this game before, and I'd nearly been his next player. I see him in my dreams now, his crooked smile, his fevered eyes standing on that empty road, waiting for someone else to stop. The fields are still out there, silent and vast, hiding secrets in their shadows. I don't drive that route anymore, but the memory of that night clings to me, a nightmare that feels too real, too close. What if he's still out there, waving down the next car, his suitcase ready, his trap set? The road stretched into darkness, swallowing my headlights like a hungry beast. At 16, I thought I'd cracked the code to freedom. A beat-up car I'd saved for, a job slinging pizzas, and the open road at night. The pizza place was my escape. From school, from parents, from the monotony of a small town. Each delivery was an adventure, a chance to crank my music and feel like I owned the world. But that night, the world had other plans, and freedom turned into a cage. It was a typical weeknight, the kind where the air smells of damp leaves and the streets hum with quiet. I'd been at the shop since 5 p.m., dodging flower clouds and folding pizza boxes between deliveries. The early rush kept me busy, but by 8, the orders trickled to a halt. I leaned against the counter, scrolling my phone, when the online system pinged. A new order. 2 medium pizzas, pepperoni and cheese, headed to a neighborhood across town. I glanced at the address, somewhere in the woodsier part, where houses hid behind trees and streetlights were scarce. Nothing unusual. I grabbed the pizzas, their warmth seeping through the insulated bag, and headed out, my car rattling to life. The drive started normal. My headlights carved a path through the dark, the radio humming a song I barely heard. The town faded behind me, replaced by stretches of empty road flanked by pines. I didn't think much of it when a pair of headlights appeared in my rear view. Nearer, a car pulling onto the road from a side street. They're just going the same way, I told myself. The roads were quiet, only a few cars passing now and then. But as the minutes ticked by, the car stayed close, its lights a constant glow. Behind me, they could have passed, there was plenty of room, but they didn't. My fingers tightened on the wheel, a faint unease creeping in. Turned up the music, trying to drown it out. 5 minutes later, the car was still there, tailing me through every turn. Why aren't they passing? I glanced in the mirror, but the headlights were too bright, blinding me to the driver's shape. A memory flickered. A story my cousin told about a delivery driver followed by a creepy customer, laughed off as a prank. I shook my head. Don't be paranoid. When I reached the neighborhood, a winding maze of wooded streets, I made a sharp turn, expecting the car to keep going. It didn't. Its headlights swung into view, following me like a shadow. My stomach twisted. What were the odds they were headed to the same place? Possible, sure, but it felt wrong, like a puzzle piece forced into the wrong slot. The GPS led me deeper into the woods, the houses growing sparser, their driveways long and hidden. My headlights caught a mailbox with the right address, a faded number peeling off the side. I pulled into the driveway, a narrow gravel path cutting through trees. The car behind me slowed, then passed, its taillights fading down the road. Relief washed over me, sharp and sudden. I chuckled, feeling foolish. Just a coincidence. I drove to the end of the driveway, about 200 feet, and parked in front of a small house. Its porch light glowed, but the windows were dark, like eyes closed, tight. I grabbed the pizzas and stepped out, the gravel crunching under my sneakers. The air was heavy, the silence broken only by crickets and the distant rustle of leaves. I knocked on the door, the sound echoing in the stillness. No answer. I waited, shifting my weight, the pizzas warm against my chest. Maybe they're in the back. I knocked again, harder. A minute passed. Then a light flickered through a window, faint and wavering. The door creaked open, revealing a woman in her early 30s, her nightgown pale in the dim light. Her face was tired, her eyes narrowed with annoyance. "Pizza delivery," I said, reading the address to confirm. She frowned, her voice sharp. "I didn't order anything. I was trying to sleep." My cheeks burned. A mix-up, probably a prank order. "Sorry," I mumbled, backing away. She shut the door, the light vanishing. I trudged back to my car, the pizzas heavy in my hands. What a waste of a night. I was halfway there when I froze. A car sat behind, mine, blocking the driveway. Its headlights were off, but the engine purred, exhaust curling like smoke in the cold air. It was the same car, the one that followed me. My heart lurched. They didn't pass. They circled back. I scanned the darkness, searching for movement, for a sign of who was inside. Nothing. The house behind me was silent, the woman probably back in bed. I forced myself to keep walking, my pulse hammering in my ears. Act normal, they'll move. I tossed the pizzas onto the passenger seat and slid into my car, locking the doors. The other car didn't budge. I started my engine, hoping they'd see I was leaving and shift aside. They didn't. The driveway was too narrow to maneuver around them, the trees pressing in on both sides. I edged forward, then turned around near the house, my tires crunching gravel. Now they'll move. But they stayed, a wall of metal and shadow. 30 seconds passed. Our cars facing each other, headlights locked like a standoff. My hands shook, my mind racing. The following, the fake order, the blockade. It wasn't random. They wanted me here. Then, the doors opened. 4 men stepped out, their hoodies and hats obscuring their faces. One kept his hand in his pocket, gripping something I couldn't see. My breath caught, the world slowing to a crawl. They're coming for you. I gripped the wheel, my foot hovering over the gas. The men spread out, moving toward me with purpose, their shadows stretching across the gravel. Run. Now. I slammed the accelerator, veering off the driveway to pass them. The car lurched, tires spinning in the dirt. I swerved, but the space was too tight. My front end slammed into a tree, the impact jarring my bones. The engine hissed, but I didn't wait to check the damage. I threw the door open and ran. The forest swallowed me, branches clawing at my face, the ground uneven beneath my feet. Footsteps pounded behind me, one of them shouting, his voice raw with anger. I didn't look back. My lungs burned, my legs screaming, but fear drove me deeper into the woods. The men's voices faded, their pursuit slowing as the trees grew denser. I stumbled, catching myself on a trunk, and kept moving, my breath ragged. When I was sure they'd stopped, I crouched behind a fallen log, my hands trembling as I fumbled for my phone. The screen glowed, a weak signal flickering. I called 911, my voice barely a whisper as I told them where I was. The police arrived too late. The men were gone, their car vanished, my car still lodged against the tree. The officers searched the house, but the woman was as confused as I was. The order was fake, placed online with a stolen card, the address chosen to lure me into a trap. What did they want? The question haunted me. Robbery? Something worse? The way one chased me, shouting to the others, felt personal, like they weren't letting me go. My car was never found, towed away, or stolen before the police could recover it. I quit the job soon after, unable to face another delivery. Every night I see them in my dreams, their shadowed faces closing in, the driveway a cage I can't escape. I was 16, too young to know how cruel the world could be, too naive to see the trap until it snapped shut. Check your mirrors, lock your doors, trust your gut, because once you're in the woods with nowhere to run, you realize some predators don't just hunt, they plan. It's 2 a.m., snow falling on a deserted road, and you're alone in your car, tired but almost home. Then a stranger knocks on your window, begging for a ride. You want to help, but what if kindness leads you straight into a trap? This is my story. The night I learned some roads lead to places you never meant to go. I'd stayed late at the office, wrestling with deadlines that refused to budge. By the time I left, it was past 1 a.m. The world outside cloaked in a light snow that dusted the streets. The cold was brutal, the kind that seeps into your bones, freezing the air in your lungs. My truck's heater hummed, a feeble defense against the chill, as I drove through the empty city. Feel the weight of the night pressing down. The roads were quiet, streetlights casting pale pools of light, snowflakes dancing in my headlights. I was exhausted, my eyes heavy, counting the miles to my bed. The radio played softly, a murmur of static and old songs, keeping me just awake enough to steer. At a red light, the intersection barren under a flickering bulb, a sharp tap on my passenger window snapped me alert. My heart lurched, my head whipping. To the side. Look, who's out there? A woman stood in the snow, her face pale, her breath visible in the freezing air. She looked young, maybe late 20s, her dark hair damp against her cheeks, eyes wide with urgency. She knocked again, her gloved hand trembling, and mouthed something I couldn't hear. I hesitated, my hand on the gear shift, but her desperate expression tugged at me. I rolled down the window, the cold rushing in. She spoke quickly, her voice shaky, apologizing for bothering me. Her car had broken down a mile back, she said, and she'd tried walking home but couldn't stand the cold. She needed a ride just a mile down the road. Help her, she's alone. Against my better judgment, I nodded, unlocking the door. She climbed in, bringing a gust of icy air, and thanked me, her words tumbling over each other. I pulled away, the light turning green, snow crunching under my tires. She sat stiffly, hands clasped in her lap, her coat damp from the storm. She thanked me again, her voice softer now, and pointed down the road, giving directions. Keep driving. She seems harmless. I asked if she was okay, trying to fill the silence, but she only nodded, her eyes fixed on the road. The city faded behind us, the buildings thinning out. She told me to turn into a neighborhood, her finger pointing to a narrow street. I knew this area vaguely, passing it daily on my commute, but I'd never driven through. As we entered, the houses came into view, small, weathered, packed close like trailers in a forgotten lot. The streetlights were dim, some broken, casting jagged shadows. Snow piled on unplowed roads, my truck's tires slipping slightly. Notice the quiet. Something's off. The deeper we went, the worse the street became. Snow choking the path, my truck struggling to grip. I glanced at her, her face unreadable, and asked if we were close. She nodded, pointing further ahead, but her voice tightened, urging me to keep going. I slowed, the engine rumbling, and said this was as far as I could go. I didn't want to get stuck. Stop here, trust your gut. Her expression shifted, a flash of irritation crossing her face. She asked again, less politely, insisting it was just a bit further. I shook my head, my unease growing, and told her I couldn't risk it. She pressed, her tone sharp, saying I'd already come this far, why stop now? My patience snapped. I told her to get out, my voice firm. She stared at me, eyes narrowing, then opened the door, stepping into the snow. The door closed and she walked toward the houses, her figure fading into the dark. Watch her. She's not what she seems. I started a 3-point turn, my headlights sweeping the street, the snow making it slow work. As the beam swung towards the houses, I froze. See them. They're waiting. A group of figures stood near the tree line just beyond the road, their shapes barely distinct in the storm. They weren't moving, just standing watching my truck. My heart pounded, a cold sweat breaking out. They were where she'd wanted me to drive, where the road disappeared into the dark. I counted maybe 5 or 6, their faces hidden, but their presence was a weight, a threat. Get out. Now. I finished the turn, my tires skidding, and pressed the gas, the truck lurching forward. The figures didn't move, but I felt their eyes heavy and unyielding as I sped away. The neighborhood vanished. My rear view swallowed by snow, but the fear stayed, clawing at my chest. I drove home, the road a blur, my mind racing. What if you'd gone further? I kept seeing her face, her sudden anger, the figures waiting in the dark. Had she planned it? Was she bait, leading me to them? I told myself maybe they were just locals, curious about a strange truck, but the way they stood, silent and still, felt wrong, like predators waiting for prey. I locked my doors that night, the house too quiet, the snow outside muffling the world. Sleep didn't come. I lay awake, replaying every moment, wondering what waited. At the end of that road you escaped. But did you really? The next day I drove a different route, avoiding that neighborhood, but the memory lingered. A shadow I couldn't shake. I don't know who she was or what they wanted, but I know I came close to something terrible. And every time it snows, I hear that knock on my window, and I wonder if they're still out there, waiting for someone else to stop. The highway hummed beneath my tires, an endless ribbon of black stretching into nowhere. At 32, I'd carved out a life-hauling cargo across state lines, just me and my rig against the open road. Winter nights were the toughest, the cold seeping into the cab, the snow dusting the windshield like ash. That night around the holidays, I left town at 6 p.m., my trailer loaded for a 2-state run. The radio crackled with static, the only voice in the dark. I was tired, the kind of bone-deep exhaustion that makes the world feel soft at the edges, but the road didn't care. It never did. By 11 p.m., my eyes were heavy, the coffee from my last stop long gone. I pulled into a small truck stop off the highway, a squat building with flickering neon signs and a parking lot half buried in snow. The place was quiet, just a couple of rigs parked in the shadows. I needed a break, bathroom, coffee, maybe a few minutes to close my eyes. I parked near the edge of the lot, the engine ticking as it cooled, and headed inside. The clerk barely looked up, his face bathed in the glow of a phone screen. I grabbed a coffee, the cup burning my palms, and stepped back into the cold. The air felt sharp, like it was watching me. Back in the cab, I took a sip, the bitter warmth grounding me. The lot was still, the snow falling in lazy spirals. I leaned back, scanning the darkness out of habit. That's when I saw him. A figure, leaned against the back of the building, half hidden in the dim light. He was tall, his coat blending into the shadows, his face obscured. He wasn't moving, wasn't smoking or checking his phone, just standing there, looking my way. My rig was the only one parked nearby, nothing else to draw his attention. His gaze felt like a weight pressing against my chest. I told myself it was nothing. Truck stops attract all kinds, drifters, loners, guys with nowhere else to go. I sipped my coffee, glancing at him every few seconds. He didn't move, didn't blink, just watched. Unease coiled in my gut, a warning I couldn't shake. I'd heard stories from other drivers, hijackings, fights in dark lots, figures that vanished when you got too close. Don't let your mind run wild, I thought, but the stories lingered like ghosts in the cab. I set the coffee down and started the engine, the rumble breaking the silence. As I pulled out, I checked the rearview mirror. He was still there, a statue carved from night. The highway swallowed me again, the snow thicker now, my headlights barely cutting through it. I tried to focus on the road, on the rhythm of driving, but my eyes kept flicking to the mirrors, searching for something I didn't want to find. About 30 minutes later, a glint caught my eye. A faint shimmer in the side mirror, like light bouncing off metal. car? I squinted, but the road behind me was empty, the snow blurring everything. It could have been a reflector, a trick of the light. I kept driving, the tires humming, the cab a cocoon of warmth against the cold. But the unease grew, a whisper, in the back of my mind. You're not alone. I turned up the radio, letting the static fill the silence, but it didn't help. The road felt different now, alive, like it was holding its breath. An hour passed, maybe more. The snow piled up, forcing me to slow, each mile a battle against exhaustion. Then it happened again, a glint, sharper this time. I shifted my eyes to the mirror and my heart skipped. A car was right behind my trailer, so close it was invisible unless it veered slightly. No headlights, just a dark shape riding my tail, its presence a violation of the empty road. Who drives like that in a storm? My hands tightened on the wheel, sweat beading on my neck despite the cold. I'd dealt with tailgaters before, impatient drivers annoyed at my speed, but this was different. No lights, no honking, just a shadow clinging to me like a predator. I merged into the left lane, hoping they'd pass. They followed, smooth as a snake. I swung back to the right, my tires skidding slightly. This time, they stayed left, slowing, until they faded into the snow. Relief flooded me, sharp and fleeting. I told myself they were gone, just some reckless driver playing games. But the stories came back. Tales of trucks followed for miles, of drivers who stopped and never started again. I shook my head, focusing on the road, the wipers slapping snow from the windshield. By 3 a.m., I was spent. A rest stop appeared, a small cutaway with space for a few rigs. No buildings or lights, just a patch of gravel off the highway. I pulled in, the only vehicle there, and cut the engine. The silence was deafening, broken only by the soft patter of snow on the roof. I reclined my seat, the cab dark except for the faint glow of highway lights. Sleep. Just a few hours. I closed my eyes, the world fading, the snow a lullaby pulling me under. I dreamed of the road, endless and twisting, of eyes watching from the dark. Something woke me, a shift in the air. My eyes fluttered open, the cab still dark, the highway lights casting long shadows. I was groggy, my body heavy, unsure why I'd stirred. Then I turned, and my blood turned to ice. Eyes stared through the window, wide and unblinking. Inches. From the glass, they were human, but wrong, too large, too hungry. Set in a face I couldn't see. My heart slammed against my ribs, my body frozen. He didn't move, didn't blink, just watched me. I lunged for the door, my hand fumbling for the lock. But he stepped back, his fingers clawing at the handle. The door rattled, once, twice, then stopped. Footsteps crunched in the snow, fading fast. I grabbed the radio, my voice shaking as I called for help. He's out there. He tried to get in. Moments later, an engine roared, and headlights flashed behind my trailer. It was the car, the one from the highway. It peeled out, vanishing into the storm. I sat there, trembling, the radio crackling with a dispatcher's voice. The police arrived an hour later, their flashlights sweeping the snow, but found nothing. No tracks, no tire marks, just my rig alone in the dark. I told them everything. The man at the truck stop, the car on the highway, the eyes at the window. They listened, but their faces said they'd heard it before. Another driver spooked by the night. I drove on at dawn, the road a blur, my mind replaying those eyes. Was it him the whole time, watching from the truck stop, following me through the snow? I'll never know who he was or why he chose me. Check your mirrors, lock your doors, keep moving. Because on the highway in the dead of night, something's always watching, waiting for you to stop. The city slept under a shroud of midnight, its streets empty, as if the world had slipped into a dream too deep to wake from. I was behind the wheel, working a DoorDash shift that stretched into the early hours, somewhere between midnight and 1 a.m. Late-night deliveries were my routine, the hum of my car and the glow of my phone a familiar comfort in the dark. The night was slow, orders trickling in like afterthoughts, and I cruised through deserted streets, music playing low to keep my mind from drifting. But tonight felt different, like the air held a secret it wasn't ready to share. My phone lit, up with a new order, and I accepted it without a second glance, eager for something to break the monotony. A quick stop at a 24/7 McDonald's, a warm bag of food in the passenger seat, and I was on my way, the app guiding me to a drop-off 15 minutes away. The roads were silent, streetlights casting long shadows that danced across the asphalt. I followed the map, my thoughts adrift, lulled by the rhythm of the drive. Then the route changed, pulling me away from the city's pulse into a place that felt forgotten. The app directed me into what should have been a business district, but this was no gleaming office park. The buildings loomed like relics, their facades crumbling, windows dark and hollow. Overgrown grass choked the sidewalks, bushes spilling, over in wild tangles, as if nature was reclaiming what man had abandoned. This isn't right. Why would anyone order food to a place like this? My stomach twisted, a faint unease settling in, but I brushed it off. I'd delivered to odd places. Before late-night workers, insomniacs, this was just another job, I told myself. Even as the darkness pressed closer, the map led me to a small office building, a squat, one-story structure that looked like it hadn't seen life in years. Its paint was peeling, the parking lot cracked and littered with weeds. The app told me to pull around back into a lot so dark it felt like stepping into a void. I parked near the building, my headlights cutting through the gloom, revealing a row of unmarked doors along the rear wall. My phone buzzed with a message from the customer. Saw you pull in. Bring it to the gray metal door on your side. The words were ordinary, but something about them felt off. Too precise, too aware. I grabbed the bag, stepped out, and scanned the doors. There it was. A gray metal slab, no windows, no markings, just a cold, uninviting surface. Why not meet me outside? Why this door, in this place? My heart beat faster, but I pushed the thought away, chalking it up to tiredness. As I approached, another message arrived. Just bring it inside, I'm right here. The instruction was simple, yet it sent a chill down my spine. I hesitated, my hand on the door handle, the metal icy against my palm. Walk in, leave the food, get out. It's nothing. I opened the door and stepped into a hallway, the air thick with dust and the faint smell of mildew. The main lights were off, replaced by dim, flickering bulbs spaced far apart, casting pools of weak light that barely held the darkness at bay. This isn't an office. This is a tomb. The hallway stretched ahead, empty and silent, no counter, no reception. Just closed doors lining the walls. I expected someone to appear, to take the food and send me on my way, but there was nothing. Just the oppressive quiet, broken only by my shallow breaths. I pulled out my phone to message the customer, my thumb hovering over the screen, when a sound stopped me cold, a faint click like a lock sliding into place. I spun around, heart lurching, and tugged at the door. It didn't move. Someone locked me in. My blood ran cold, the bag slipping from my hand to the floor. I yanked harder, desperation rising, but the door held firm, sealing me inside this forgotten place. What did I walk into? Panic clawed at my chest, my mind racing for answers. Was this a mistake? A prank? Or something worse? I backed away, eyes darting down the hallway. the dim lights casting shadows that seemed to shift, to watch. You need to move. Find another way out. Now. I forced myself forward, each step echoing in the silence, my senses screaming that I wasn't alone. Then it came. A door opening somewhere in the building, the sound distant but deliberate, followed by the soft thud of it closing. My breath caught, my body freezing as I strained to listen. Footsteps, slow and measured, moved through the dark, growing closer. They know I'm here. They're coming for me. I ran, the hallway blurring past, my sneakers silent on the dusty floor. I reached another door, pushed through, and found myself in a second hallway just as dim, with rows of office rooms on either side. The footsteps were louder now, purposeful, closing the distance. Hide. You have to hide. I slipped into the nearest room, crouching behind a desk, my heart pounding so loud I was sure it would betray me. The air was stale, the room cluttered, with broken furniture, papers scattered like ghosts of a life long gone. The footsteps stopped outside the door, hesitating, as if sensing my presence. They're right there, don't move, don't breathe. Seconds stretched into eternity, my body trembling, every nerve on edge. Then the steps moved on, fading down the hallway toward the locked door. This is your chance. Go. I bolted from the room, running the opposite way, praying for an exit. The hallway twisted, leading me to another door, and I burst through it, the cool night air hitting my face like a lifeline. My car was still there, waiting in the lot, and I sprinted to it, fumbling with my keys. I drove away, tires gripping, the cracked pavement, my hands shaking as I dialed 911, words tumbling out in a frantic rush. The police took 20 minutes to arrive, too late to find anyone. The building was empty, they said, and had been for 5 years, a hollow shell with no cameras, no traces. I sat in my car, the operator's voice a distant hum, my mind replaying the night. Who sent that order? Who locked the door? The customers, messages so calm, so calculated, felt like bait, luring me into that trap. What would have happened if I'd stayed in that hallway? If I hadn't run? The thought haunted me, a shadow that followed me home, lingering in the corners of my dreams. That building is still out there, silent and waiting, ready for the next delivery, the next driver who doesn't turn back. I don't do late night runs anymore, but the memory of that door, that hallway, those footsteps, it's a nightmare I can't outrun. It's 9 p.m., and I'm driving through a forest to deliver food to an address that doesn't exist. The trees swallow the road, and a light flickers in the dark, beckoning me closer. Someone's out there, waiting. I was in my mid-20s, piecing together a living with delivery jobs, thinking I could handle anything the night threw at me. This is the story of the run that proved me wrong. The restaurant was a dive on the edge of town, its neon sign buzzing over a parking lot littered with cigarette butts. I'd been driving for hours, my phone pinging with orders that kept me moving through the cold October night. Around 9 p.m., a new one came in, a takeout order, nothing special, just a bag of food to a place 20 minutes out. Keep going. It's just another drop. The address was unfamiliar, far beyond the usual neighborhoods, out where the town frayed into fields and woods. I didn't think twice, grabbed the order and slid into my car, the smell of fried rice filling the cabin. The GPS lit up, plotting a route that veered off the main roads, and I pulled out, tires crunching on gravel, the town shrinking in my rear view. The drive started simple, streetlights fading as I hit the so-called highway, a narrow one-lane road slicing through a forest of towering pines. The trees pressed close, their branches knitting a canopy that blocked the moon, leaving only my headlights to cut the dark. Stay focused. You're almost there. The air was sharp, seeping through the cracked window, carrying the scent of damp, earth and resin. My radio stayed off, the silence broken only by the hum of the engine and the occasional snap of a twig under my tires. The deeper I went, the more isolated it felt, like the world had dropped away, leaving just me and the endless tunnel of trees. I glanced at the GPS, watching the distance shrink, expecting a turnoff, a driveway, a house, something. But as the screen announced my arrival, the road stayed empty, nothing but forest on both sides. I eased to a stop, my car idling in the middle of the asphalt, headlights spilling into the trees. Check again. This can't be right. The GPS insisted I was here, but there was no house, no mailbox, no sign of life. Just a wall of pines, their trunks vanishing into the shadows. My stomach knotted, a prickle of unease crawling up my neck. I tapped my phone, pulling up Google Maps, then Apple Maps, hoping for clarity. Both pointed to this exact spot, a nowhere place in the woods. Don't panic. Find the address. I leaned forward, squinting through the windshield, scanning for a hidden drive or a light in the distance. The forest stared back, silent and unyielding, its darkness thick enough to swallow sound. My fingers hovered over the phone, debating whether to call the customer or just mark the order undeliverable. Call them, get answers. I dialed the number, the ringing loud in the quiet car, each tone stretching my nerves. A man answered, his voice low and clipped, asking who I was. I explained I had their food but couldn't find the house, my words careful, probing. He sounded calm, too calm, saying I was right where I needed to be. Listen closely. He's too sure. He mentioned a small driveway, a dirt path into the woods, easy to miss in the dark. I told him I didn't see it, my eyes darting to the trees, searching. He urged me to get out and look, his tone insistent, like he knew exactly where I stood. As he spoke, a faint glow flickered in the forest, a brief pulse of light, like a phone screen or a flashlight, maybe 50 yards in. See that? It's him. My breath hitched, my grip tightening on the steering wheel. The light vanished, plunging the woods back into black. I asked which way to look, trying to keep him talking, but the line cut off, the silence sudden and heavy, like a door slamming. Shut, my heart pounded, the car's warmth fading as cold seeped in. Look again. It's not a mistake. I stared into the trees, willing my eyes to adjust, and there it was. Another flash, quick and deliberate, deeper in the forest. My pulse roared, a cold sweat breaking out. That was the man, wasn't it? Out. There, watching, waiting for me to follow. Why was he in the woods? Why no house, no real road? Don't move. Think. I scanned the roadside, my headlights catching a faint break in the undergrowth. A narrow dirt trail, barely wide enough for a person, scratched into the earth like an afterthought. It wasn't a driveway, nothing a car could navigate, just a path leading into the dark. The man's voice echoed in my mind, pushing me to walk down it, to bring the food to him. Stay here. It's not safe. Then a sound, a soft shift in the bushes like footsteps pressing through leaves, coming from the direction of the light. My body locked up, every instinct screaming to run. Leave the food. Get out. I grabbed the delivery bag, my hands shaking, and stepped out, the cold biting my skin. The air smelled of pine and wet soil, the forest unnaturally still. I set the bag on the ground by the road, my eyes never leaving the trees. The light gone, but the feeling of being watched heavy on my chest. The sound came again, closer, a deliberate movement in the undergrowth. He's coming. Go now. I dove, back into the car, slamming the door, my fingers fumbling with the keys. The engine roared to life, tires skidding as I peeled away, the headlights swinging wildly across the trees. I didn't look back, didn't dare, the road blurring as I pushed the gas, the forest a dark tide swallowing my rear view. You're out. But is he following? I drove straight home, the 20-minute trip a frantic haze, my hands gripping the wheel until my knuckles ached. I locked every door that night, the house too quiet, the windows reflecting my pale face. Sleep was impossible, the memory of that light searing my mind. What was he planning? I kept picturing that trail, imagining myself walking into the woods, the trees closing around me, the man stepping out with that calm voice and those hidden eyes. Maybe it was a prank, some local messing with drivers for kicks. But the light, the sudden hang-up, the sound in the bushes, it felt too real, too planned. You got away, but what if you hadn't? I stopped taking deliveries to that area, sticking to bright streets and crowded neighborhoods. But the fear clung to me, a shadow on every dark road. I told myself stories to cope. Maybe he was just lost, his phone died, the light a coincidence. But deep down I knew better. He was waiting for you. Every night when the house creaks or the wind carries the scent of pine, I see that glow, hear that rustle, and wonder if he's still out there, his trap set for the next driver who stops. The night was a canvas of shadows, painted with whispers of things that didn't belong. I was a Domino's delivery driver, a few months into the job, ferrying pizzas through the late hours to scrape by. The work was simple: pick up, drop off, pocket the tips, but it had a rhythm that kept me grounded. That night I clocked in at 8 p.m., the shop buzzing with orders as the clock ticked toward closing at midnight. The town was small, its streets familiar, but some corners felt like they belonged to another world, hidden in the folds of the dark. Around 11 p.m., a new order flashed on my screen, pulling me toward a place I'd never been, a place that felt like it was waiting for me. I grabbed the pizzas, the heat of the boxes warming my hands, and headed out. The address led to the woodsy edge of town, where houses gave way to dense forests and winding roads. I'd always imagined this area as a retreat for the wealthy, their mansions tucked among the trees. But at night, it was desolate, the woods swallowing any sign of life. The GPS guided me onto a gravel road, its surface crunching under my tires, flanked by tall lamps that cast feeble pools of light. The air grew heavier, the forest closing in, as if it knew something I didn't. At the road's end, the path split into 5 narrow trails, too tight for my car. A sign read, "Welcome to Frosted Oak Cabins," marking a rental property lost in the wilderness. The order specified Cabin 3, and I found the trail leading to it, its dim lanterns flickering like dying stars. I parked, grabbed the pizzas, and started down the path, the gravel giving way to soft earth. The lanterns were sparse, their light barely reaching beyond a few feet, forcing me to walk through stretches of darkness between them. Each step felt like crossing a threshold, from safety into something unknown. The woods were quiet, save for the rustle of leaves and the distant hum of night creatures, their calls weaving a tapestry of unease. I gripped the pizza boxes tighter, my eyes straining to see ahead, half expecting to trip over roots or lose the path entirely. After what felt like an eternity, maybe 3 or 4 minutes, I reached the end, a small clearing where Cabin 3 stood, a squat wooden structure swallowed by the dark. No light spilled from its windows, no warmth, just a void that seemed to watch me back. I approached the door, my footsteps muffled on the porch, and knocked, the sound echoing inside like a plea unanswered. Silence followed, thick and oppressive. Why would someone order pizza to an empty cabin? I pulled out my phone and dialed the number on the order, the ringing loud in the stillness. It went on for a full minute, then cut to silence. No voicemail, no response. I stood there, the weight of the woods pressing against me, debating whether to leave the pizzas and go. Just walk away. It's not worth it. But I'd come too far, and the thought of returning empty-handed nagged at me. As I turned to leave, my phone buzzed with a text from the same number. Not at the cabin right now. Doors unlocked. Leave the pizzas on the table inside. Thanks. The words were polite, but they felt wrong, like a lure cast into the dark. Stared at the door, my hand hovering over the handle. Don't go in, you know better. But the job, the routine, pushed me forward. I turned the knob, the door yielding easily, and stepped inside. The air was stale, heavy with the scent of damp wood and neglect. The cabin was pitch black, the faint glow from the lanterns outside barely reaching the interior. This isn't a home. It's a shell, abandoned, waiting. I fumbled for my phone's flashlight, its beam cutting through the gloom, revealing a single open room with a table in the center and a closed door at the far end, likely a bedroom. I moved toward the table, my steps cautious, every instinct screaming to leave. Just set the pizzas down and get out. Hurry. I placed the boxes on the table, my hands trembling, when a sound froze me. A faint creak from the bedroom door, like a breath held too long. My eyes snapped to the door, my heart pounding as it began to open, slow and deliberate. Someone's here. They lied. A man emerged, his silhouette tall and menacing in the dim light. His face was shadowed, but his eyes gleamed with something unnatural, something hungry. "Hey," he said, his voice too calm, too friendly. "Got my tip right here. Thanks for coming inside." He moved toward me too fast, his steps heavy, his smile a mask that didn't fit. I backed away, stuttering excuses, my voice lost in the rising panic. He lunged, his hand reaching for me, his face twisting into a snarl of rage. "Run. Now." I spun toward the door, sprinting across the room, my breath ragged. I burst outside, but another figure loomed in the dark, blocking my path. I collided with him, his body stumbling into the grass as I caught myself, my legs pumping as I tore down the path. They were behind me, both of them, their footsteps pounding. The earth, their presence a weight I couldn't shake. I glanced back, but the lantern's light revealed nothing, just shadows chasing shadows. My car was my lifeline, waiting at the trail's end, and I threw myself inside, locking the doors as I fumbled with the keys. The engine roared to life, and I sped away, the gravel road blurring beneath me. They didn't catch me, but they were so close, too close. I called the police, my voice shaking as I recounted the night, hoping the order details, phone number, cabin address would lead to answers. But there were no answers, only more questions. The cabin was unrented, the phone number fake, the payment made with a prepaid card. The men had vanished, leaving no trace, no clue to their intent. I see it now, the trap they set, so clear it makes my skin crawl. They'd planned it all, the late-night order, the empty cabin, the unlocked door. The second man waiting outside, watching me walk that path, his presence a ghost I hadn't sensed until it was too late. What did they want? To rob me? To hurt me? Or something worse? The thought haunts me, a nightmare that blurs the line between memory and fear. That cabin is still out there, hidden in the woods, its door unlocked, waiting for the next driver to step inside. I quit Domino's soon after, but the forest, the darkness, the weight of those eyes, they follow me, a shadow I can't outrun. The night was too quiet, like the world had forgotten to breathe. At 23, I was a college kid scraping by, running DoorDash during winter break to pad my bank account. The gig was simple: pick up food, drop it off, repeat. Most nights were uneventful. Just me, my beat-up sedan, and the hum of the radio. But that night something shifted. like a shadow slipping into my world, unnoticed until it was too late. It was around 9 p.m., the air sharp with the bite of early winter. I'd done a few deliveries earlier, quick runs to dorms and apartments, but boredom had crept in. I decided to log back into the app, chasing one more order before calling it quits. The screen lit up with a new request, a big one, 2 full bags of food from a local diner, headed to a neighborhood I didn't know. Easy money, I thought, accepting it without a second glance. I swung by the diner, the smell of fries and burgers filling my car as I loaded the bags. The GPS plotted a route to the address, a 15-minute drive to the edge of town, where the streets grew dark and the houses sparse. The road wound through a maze of suburban streets, the kind where streetlights flicker and trees loom like silent sentinels. My headlights carved a path, the radio fading to static as I left the city behind. The neighborhood felt off, too quiet, the houses set far back, swallowed by overgrown lawns. Why would anyone order this much food out here? A memory surfaced, a story from a friend about a delivery driver who found a house empty, the order a prank. I brushed it off. People order late. It's fine. But the quiet pressed against me, heavy, like a warning I couldn't read. The GPS pinged, directing me to a dead-end road. My headlights caught a wooden gate, the address scrawled in peeling paint. This is it? None of the other houses had gates, their driveways open to the street. This one felt hidden, like it didn't want to be found. I stepped out, the cold biting my cheeks, and pushed the gate open. It swung easily, no lock, just a creak that echoed in the stillness. Back in the car, I drove down a gravel path, the trees closing in, their branches scraping the roof. At the end was a house, small and wooden, its paint chipped like old skin. No lights, not a single one. My headlights bathed the front, but the windows stayed dark, unyielding. And the door, it was wide open. I killed the engine, the silence, rushing in, broken only by the faint rustle of leaves. The bags were heavy in my hands, the plastic crinkling as I stepped onto the porch. The open door gaped like a mouth, the darkness inside absolute. Why's it open? I hesitated, my breath clouding in the cold. I called out, "Delivery!" My voice sounded small, swallowed by the house. No answer. I set the bags down, ready to leave, when a voice drifted from inside, low and rough. "Hey, just bring it up here for me, bud." It came from upstairs, somewhere in the shadows. My heart lurched. Upstairs, in a dark house? I froze, the bags at my feet, my eyes locked on the doorway. The voice was casual, almost friendly, but it felt wrong, like a mask hiding something sharp. Who leaves their door open and waits in the dark? Another memory hit me. A late-night story from a DoorDash group chat about a driver lured into a vacant house, the order placed by someone who was never there. My palms sweated, the cold forgotten. I stepped closer, peering inside. A staircase rose from the entryway, its steps vanishing into blackness. The voice called again, closer now, from the top of the stairs. "Attaboy, I'll grab it from you. Right up here." My foot crossed the threshold, the floorboards groaning under my weight. The air inside was stale, thick with the smell of dust and neglect. My phone's flashlight cut a weak beam, illuminating peeling wallpaper and cobwebs strung like traps. This place is empty. No furniture, no signs of life, just the staircase looming ahead. The voice felt like a lure, pulling me deeper, but my gut screamed to run. What's waiting up there? I took another step, the darkness pressing against me, my flashlight shaking in my hand. The stairs looked endless, each one a choice I didn't want to make. Then something shifted, a faint movement in the shadows above. My breath caught, my body screaming to move. It's not empty. I backed away, my sneakers scuffing the floor, the bags forgotten on the porch. The voice called again, sharper now. "Hey, where you going?" It wasn't friendly anymore, the mask slipping, revealing something hungry. I turned and ran, my flashlight beam bouncing wildly, the cold air hitting me as I burst outside. The door slammed behind me, though I never touched it. I didn't look back, sprinting to my car, my keys slipping in my trembling hands. The engine roared to life and I peeled out, the gravel spitting under my tires. I drove straight home, my heart pounding, the rearview mirror empty but heavy with the weight of unseen eyes. What was in that house? I didn't tell anyone, too shaken to explain, too afraid of sounding crazy. A few days later, I looked up the address, my fingers trembling as I typed. The results chilled me. The house was abandoned, owned by the state, uninhabited for years. No one should have been there. No one should have called my name. Every night I see that staircase, the darkness at the top, the voice whispering my name. I quit DoorDash, but the fear stayed, a shadow that follows me, waiting for me to step into the dark again. Lock your doors, check your orders, listen to your gut. Because some houses aren't empty. They're waiting, and what's inside knows you're coming. Night falls over a lonely campground, the fire crackling as I sit alone, thinking I'm safe in the quiet woods. Then footsteps approach from the darkness, and a man I met hours ago steps into the light, his intentions no longer hidden. I was looking for a weekend escape, a chance to unplug in the wilderness. But what I found was a lesson in how quickly solitude can turn to terror. The campground was a small patch of cleared land, 45 minutes from town, nestled in a forest of towering pines. I'd chosen it for its simplicity, just 3 sites, each with a fire pit and a bench surrounded by dense trees that muffled the world. It was a 4-day weekend, and I needed to get away, to breathe air that didn't smell of asphalt and deadlines. Settle in. This is your space. I parked my truck in the dirt lot, the only vehicle there, and hauled my gear to the leftmost site, the crunch of pine needles underfoot the only sound. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of sap and earth, and the late afternoon sun filtered through the branches, casting long shadows. I set up my tent, the canvas snapping taut, and unfolded a chair, feeling the weight of the city slip away. The other sites were empty, the solitude exactly what I'd craved. With the tent pitched, I realized I had no plan. What now? Just sit. Here? I'd brought a book but couldn't focus, the quiet too vast. Maybe there was a trail nearby, something to explore. I walked back to the parking lot, my boots scuffing the dirt, hoping for a signpost or map. Nothing. Just my truck, alone under the trees. Then I saw it. A red Toyota, old and battered, parked beside mine. Noticed that. It wasn't here before. Its paint was chipped, rust eating the edges, dents scarring the hood. No license plates, front or back, just blank spaces where they should have been. My stomach tightened, a flicker of unease. Someone else was here. But where? I scanned the trees, seeing only shadows, and headed back to my site, telling myself they were probably at another site, setting up their own camp. Back at my spot, I sat on a log, the bark rough under my hands, and tried to shake the feeling. Relax, it's just another camper. The sun dipped lower, the forest growing cooler, the light softening to a golden haze. I was poking at the dirt with a stick when footsteps approached, steady and deliberate from the trail behind me. I turned, my pulse quickening. A man stood there, maybe in his 30s, though he looked older, worn down by something I couldn't name. His brown jacket was torn, stained with grime, his beard and hair oily and tangled. He looked at me, eyes sharp, and asked if I could help him with something later. Stay calm. Hear him out. His voice was casual, but his gaze didn't waver, pinning me in place. I nodded, saying sure, not wanting to seem rude. He thanked me, quick and clipped, saying he had things to do first but would come back. He turned and walked off, his steps fading into the trees. I sat there unsettled, wondering why he'd come just to say that. Why not ask now? I waited, expecting him to return soon. Keep an eye out. He'll be back. Minutes stretched into an hour. Then, 2. The sun sank, the forest darkening, the air growing heavy with the chill of evening. I built a fire, the flames licking at the wood, casting a warm glow over my sight. The crackle of burning logs drowned out the strangeness, and I let myself forget, focusing on the heat against my skin, the smell of smoke. Dinner was a can of beans, warmed over the fire, the metal hot in my hands. The man slipped from my mind, his visit a minor oddity in a long day. Let it go. He's not coming. Night settled in, the stars hidden by the canopy, the forest a wall of black beyond the firelight, then footsteps again, slower this time, crunching on the gravel trail. Listen, he's back. My body tensed, the fire's glow suddenly too small, too fragile. The steps grew louder, deliberate, emerging from the dark. I turned, my heart thudding, and saw him, the same man, his jacket blending into the shadows, his face half lit by the flames. He smiled, a thin, forced curve, and asked if I was ready to help, saying it'd only take a minute. Watch him. Something's wrong. His voice was light, but his eyes were hard, and he didn't explain what he needed. I hesitated, asking what it was about, my words careful. He ignored the question, stepping closer, his smile faltering. The firelight caught his hand, hovering near his jacket, and I saw it, a glint of metal, the handle of a knife tucked inside. Run! Now! My blood ran cold, every instinct screaming. I backed up, my voice stumbling, saying I was busy. His smile vanished, his hand twitching toward the knife. I turned and bolted, plunging into the woods, branches clawing at my face, the dark swallowing me. Keep moving, don't stop. His footsteps pounded behind, heavy and fast, his breath ragged in the silence. The forest was a maze, roots tripping my feet, pine needles slick under my boots. I wove between trees, my lungs burning, his pursuit relentless. For 2 minutes, he chased me, his steps slowing as I pushed deeper, the sound fading. You're safe, but are you? I crouched, heart hammering, and pulled out my phone. The screen's glow faint, but enough to dial 911. My voice shook as I whispered to the operator, explaining the man, the knife, the chase. They told me to stay put. Help was coming. When the police arrived, their flashlights sweeping the campground, they found nothing. My truck stood alone in the lot, the red Toyota gone, the man vanished. I told them everything, his appearance, his words, the knife, my words tumbling over each other. They searched the area, their radios crackling, but the forest gave no answers. He's out there. He planned this. I drove home, the road blurring, the night pressing against my windows. I couldn't shake the image of his face, the way he'd waited until dark, luring me with that fake request for help. Maybe it was a robbery or something worse. What if you'd followed him? I told myself he was just a drifter, a one-time threat. But the way he'd watched me, the knife's glint, felt too calculated, too personal. I haven't camped alone since. The wood's now a place of shadows, not solace. Every rustle in the dark, every snap of a twig, brings him back. And I wonder if he's still out there, waiting for someone else to say yes. The forest exhaled a quiet menace. its shadows weaving secrets that clung to the trees like forgotten dreams. It was 2014, and I lived in a small town cradled by dense woods, where the air always carried the scent of pine and earth. I'd scored a rare 4-day weekend from work, and the itch to escape the grind led me to a tiny campground about 45 minutes from home. I craved solitude, a chance to breathe without the weight of routine pressing down. The campground was modest, just 3 sites with weathered fire pits and splintered benches, tucked deep in a forest so thick it felt like stepping into another world. I arrived alone, my truck the only vehicle in the dirt lot, and chose the leftmost site, unaware that the woods were watching, waiting for me to make a mistake. The walk from the lot to the campsite was short, 5 minutes through a tunnel of trees, their branches knitting a canopy that filtered the sunlight into dappled patches. I set up my tent, the canvas snapping taut under my hands, and unpacked my gear, the familiar motions grounding me. The air was crisp, the silence broken only by the rustle of leaves and the distant call of a bird. For an hour I sat on a log, staring into the forest, feeling the world slow down. But something felt off, like a note played just out of tune. I didn't know what to do with myself. Read. Hike. The campground offered no trails, no distractions, just the oppressive quiet of the woods. Restless, I wandered back to the lot, hoping to find a path or signpost. There was no trail, but there was a car, a rusted red Toyota, its body scarred with dents and scratches, parked beside my truck like it had crawled out of the earth. The Toyota was old, its paint peeling like dead skin, and I noticed something strange: no license plates front or back. Who drives a car like that to a campground? My stomach tightened, but I reasoned it belonged to another camper, someone at the other sites. I returned to my spot, the unease lingering like a faint smell, and settled on the log again, staring to the fire pit. 10 minutes later, footsteps approached, deliberate and unhurried, snapping me out of my thoughts. I turned, my pulse quickening, and saw a man walking down the trail. He carried no gear, no backpack, just himself, his eyes fixed on me with an intensity that felt invasive. He was in his 30s, maybe older, his appearance worn beyond his years. His brown jacket was tattered, riddled with holes and stains, his beard and hair greasy, tangled like they hadn't seen a comb in months. He smiled, a crooked, hollow gesture that didn't reach his eyes, and I felt the forest grow colder. "You got a minute to help with something?" he asked, his voice rough but oddly casual. I hesitated, caught off guard but with nothing else to do. I nodded. "Sure." His smile widened, too eager, too wrong. He thanked me, then said he wasn't ready yet, had some things to sort out, but he'd come back soon. Before I could ask what he needed, he turned and vanished down the trail, his footsteps fading into the trees. Why come all this way just to say that? I sat back down, my mind turning over the encounter, trying to convince myself it was nothing. Maybe he was unpacking, setting up camp. I waited, expecting him to return in 10-15 minutes, but half an hour passed, then another. The sun dipped below the trees, painting the forest in shades of dusk, and I forgot about him, lulled by the crackle of my campfire as I cooked dinner. Night fell, and the woods transformed, the darkness a living thing that pressed against the firelight. I was stirring my food, the flames casting flickering shadows, when footsteps returned, heavier now, cutting through the silence like a blade. I froze, my heart lurching as I peered into the trail. The darkness was absolute, swallowing any trace of him, but I heard him coming, each step deliberate, crunching the gravel. He emerged into the firelight, the same man, his face sharper now, his eyes glinting with something I couldn't name. "Hey, you ready?" he said, his voice low, almost mocking. Just need a little help." I stood, my mouth dry. "With what?" He ignored the question, his smile forced, like a mask slipping. "Won't take long, you're not busy, right?" His words were light, but they carried a weight, a push I couldn't ignore. My instincts screamed to say no, but my awkwardness betrayed me. And I nodded, the fire's warmth fading as I stepped away from it. "Follow him, and it'll be fine. Just a quick favor." He led the way, moving deeper into the forest, his figure barely visible in the dark. He had no flashlight, no light at all, yet he walked with purpose, like the woods were his domain. I trailed behind, the trail vanishing underfoot, the trees closing in. "So, what do you need help with?" I asked, my voice unsteady. He paused, just for a moment, then kept walking, silent. My heart raced, my body sensing the danger my mind refused to name. The forest was too quiet now, the usual sounds of night gone, replaced by a stillness that felt like a held breath. "Something's wrong. Get out." I slowed my steps, putting distance between us, my eyes locked on his back. He sensed it, his head turning, his fake smile twisting into a frown. He stopped, and so did I, the air thick with tension. His hand moved to his jacket, and I saw it, the glint of a knife handle, cold and deadly. Panic surged, and I turned, sprinting into the woods, branches clawing at my face, my breath ragged. His footsteps followed, heavy and relentless, his breathing a growl in the dark. I ran blindly, the forest a maze of shadows, my heart pounding as I dodged trees, praying he'd tire. 2 minutes felt like forever, but his steps slowed, then stopped, leaving only my own frantic running. I kept going, my phone and keys my only anchors, until I reached the lot, my truck a beacon in the night. I called 911, my voice shaking, and waited. The police found nothing. No red Toyota, no man, just my truck alone in the lot. I described him, the car, every detail etched in my mind, but it wasn't enough. He'd planned it, I realized, his daytime visit a lure to gain my trust, his return a trap set for the dark. The thought chilled me, a nightmare too real to shake. What did he want? Why me? The forest holds its secrets, and that campground, that trail, they're still out there, waiting for the next lone camper. I see his face in my dreams, his knife gleaming, his smile promising things I never want to know. I haven't camped since, but the woods call to me, a whisper I fear answering. The lake was a mirror, reflecting a sky that didn't trust the stars. 2 years ago, in the heart of a Minnesota spring, I set out for a solo camping trip, craving the quiet of the wild. The lake was a familiar haunt, a place I'd shared with friends and family, its shores a canvas of memories. But this time I went alone, my tent and a cooler my only companions. The 2-hour hike through flat trails was easy, the air sweet with pine and damp earth. I pitched my camp a stone's throw from the water, far enough into the woods to feel hidden, and settled into a folding chair with a beer. The world felt right, until it didn't. As the sun dipped below the trees, the lake turned molten gold, then gray, then black. I built a fire, its crackle a steady pulse against the night's silence. The birds had gone quiet, their songs replaced by the hum of crickets and the soft lap of water. I'd always loved nights like this, the forest a blanket that shut out the world. But that night, something was off. A prickle crawled up my neck, like eyes boring into me from the dark. I scanned the trees, their shadows swaying in the firelight, but saw nothing. Just the woods, vast and endless, holding secrets I couldn't name. I sipped my beer, the cold can grounding me, and told myself it was nothing. You're alone. It's just you. The feeling grew heavy like the air before a storm. I'd never been paranoid, not out here. I knew these woods, their sounds, their rhythms. But this was different. A weight, a presence, pressing against me. Something's watching. I stood, my flashlight cutting a weak beam through the trees. But the light drowned in the darkness. No eyes glinted back, no shapes moved. I sat back down, my heart beating too fast, and tried to focus on the fire. A story came to mind, one my uncle told years ago, about a camper who felt watched, only to find footprints circling his tent at dawn. I shook it off. Stories weren't real. But the prickle didn't fade, and the forest felt alive, its silence a lie. Hours passed, the fire burning low, casting long shadows that danced like specters. I checked my watch, 10 p.m., maybe 11. The night was deep now, the kind that swallows. I was about to douse the fire when a crack split the air, sharp and heavy, like a branch snapping under weight. My body froze, my breath caught in my throat. The sound echoed, rippling across the lake, too loud for a small animal, too deliberate for the wind. Something's out there. I grabbed my bear spray, my fingers trembling, and called out, "Hello? Someone there?" My voice sounded small, lost in the vastness. No answer, just the silence, thicker now, like it was waiting. I stood, my flashlight in one hand, bear spray in the other, and scanned the trees. Nothing. But the crack lingered in my mind, a warning I couldn't ignore. What could break a branch like that? A bear? A person? The thought of a person was worse somehow, their intent unknown, their presence unnatural in this wilderness. I added wood to the fire, the flames flaring, pushing back the dark. Every few minutes I swept the flashlight across the trees, my eyes straining for movement. "You're imagining it," I told myself. But the lie felt thin, fraying at the edges. Then, it happened. My flashlight beam caught something, a shape tall and solid at the edge of the light. A man, impossibly tall, maybe 6'5", standing among the trees. His outline was stark, his face hidden in shadow, but I felt his gaze, heavy and unyielding. My heart slammed against my ribs, adrenaline flooding my veins. He's watching me. I held the light on him, my hand shaking. And for a moment he was still, a statue carved from night. Then he moved, stepping back, the darkness swallowing him. He didn't want to be seen. My mind raced, piecing it together. The crack, the feeling, the eyes I couldn't see but knew were there. He's been here the whole time. Panic took over. I tore down my tent, the fabric ripping in my haste, and shoved my gear into my backpack. He's out there, waiting. I didn't know why, didn't care. Robbery, something worse. The size of him, the weight he must carry, made the crack make sense. He could crush me. I slung the pack over my shoulder, my flashlight dimming, and ran. The opposite way, toward the trail to my car. The forest closed in, branches clawing at my face, the ground uneven beneath my boots. Is he following? I didn't dare look back. Didn't stop until I reached the trailhead, my lungs burning, my legs shaking. The car was a lifeline, its metal frame a shield against the dark. I threw my gear inside, locked the doors, and sped away. The lake shrinking in my rearview mirror. What did he want? The question haunted me, a loop I couldn't escape. Why watch? Why wait? I drove home, the road a blur, my mind replaying his shape, his silence. I still camp, but it's not the same. Every rustle, every shadow feels like him, watching from just out of sight. I check my gear twice, sleep with a knife close, but the fear lingers, a scar from that night. Trust your gut, scan the dark, never stop moving. Because in the woods, some things don't hunt, they wait, and they see you long before you see them. A blizzard rages outside my home, the world buried in snow, and I'm curled up on the couch, safe in the quiet. Then a single sound cuts through the storm, and I realize someone's been inside with me. I thought a night at home would be a refuge, a chance to escape the cold and chaos. Instead, it became the night I learned how fragile safety can be. The blizzard hit hard, a wall of white that turned the town into a ghost. I'd called off work, unwilling to risk the icy roads, and settled into my small house, a place I'd always thought of as mine alone. Feel the warmth. You're secure here. The living room was cozy, the couch soft under a pile of blankets, the TV murmuring some old movie I barely watched. Outside, the wind howled, rattling the windows, piling snow against the glass. The air smelled of the coffee I'd brewed, its warmth lingering in my hands as I sipped, letting the storm's rhythm lull me. It was early evening, maybe 8 p.m., and the weight of the day pulled at my eyelids. I sank deeper into the cushions, the glow of the screen flickering across the room, and drifted off, the world fading to a soft blur. A sharp sound jolted me awake, my body rigid before my mind caught. Listen, that wasn't the storm. A single cough, low and distinct, came from just outside the front door. My heart stuttered, the room snapping into focus. The house was dark, the TV off, the only light a faint glow from a street lamp struggling through the snow. Checked the time. How long were you out? I fumbled for my phone, its screen showing past midnight. I'd slept for hours. The cough echoed in my memory, too real to be a dream, too close to ignore. Someone's there, right outside. I sat up, blankets sliding to the floor, the air colder than it should have been. The storm roared outside, a whiteout that hid the entire world, but that sound had pierced it, a warning I couldn't shake. I crept to the front door, my socks silent on the hardwood, and pressed my eye to the peephole. Nothing but swirling snow, the porch empty, the street invisible. Look closer. Are you sure? I turned away, my pulse still racing, trying to convince myself it was nothing. A neighbor, a stray animal, my mind playing tricks. Go back to sleep. It's fine. But as I stepped toward the couch, a flicker caught my eye, a shadow moving down. The hallway, quick and human, vanishing around the corner. Freeze, that was real. My breath caught, my body trembling, the house suddenly too big, too open. The hallway led to the kitchen, the bedrooms, places I couldn't see from here. Someone's inside. My mind raced, piecing together the impossible. How could they be? In here. The doors were locked, the windows sealed against the storm. I called out, my voice shaky, asking if anyone was there. But the silence that answered was heavier, like the house was holding its breath. Move. You have to check. I grabbed a flashlight from the coffee table, its beam cutting through the dark, and took a step, the floor creaking under my weight. The hallway stretched before me, a tunnel of shadows, the air thick with the smell of dust and cold. Stay alert. They're close. I moved slowly, flashlight sweeping the walls, catching framed photos and closed doors. My heart pounded, each beat loud in my ears, the beam trembling in my hand. I reached the kitchen, its counters bare, the sink glinting under the light. Nothing. I turned toward the back room, the one with the big window facing the yard, and stopped. Feel that? The air's wrong. A draft hit me, icy and sharp, carrying the scent of snow. My flashlight found the window, wide open, snow drifting onto the floor, the curtains fluttering like ghosts. They were here. They're gone. My stomach dropped, the truth crashing in. Someone had been inside, moving through my home, and they'd just fled. I ran to the window, my hands shaking as I slammed it shut, the cold glass biting my fingers. Lock it. Call for help. I grabbed my phone, dialing 911, my voice stumbling as I told the operator what happened. The cough, the shadow, the open window. They said officers were coming, but the storm would slow them down. I stood there, flashlight, gripped tight, scanning the room, expecting the intruder to reappear, to step from the dark with whatever they'd planned. Wait. What did they want? The house felt violated, its walls no longer a shield, every corner a hiding place. I backed into the living room, my eyes darting to the door, the windows, the hallway, the silence pressing against me, broken only by the wind's wail outside. The police arrived, their headlights faint through the snow, their boots crunching as they approached. I let them in, the cold rushing past, and explained everything. My words frantic, pointing to the window, the wet floor, the hallway where I'd seen the shadow. Show them. Make them understand. They searched the house, their flashlights sweeping, but found nothing. No footprints, no signs of forced entry. The blizzard erasing any trace. They took my statement, their faces kind but skeptical, saying the storm made it impossible to track anyone. They don't believe you, but you know. They left, promising to patrol, and I locked the door behind them, the house swallowing me again. Its warmth gone, replaced by a chill I couldn't shake. I didn't sleep that night, sitting on the couch, flashlight in hand, staring at the door. Watch. They could come back. The cough, the shadow, the open window. They played on a loop, each memory sharper, more menacing. Maybe it was a burglar caught off guard when I woke. Maybe something worse. Someone who'd watched me, waited for the storm to hide their approach. Why your house? Why you? I told myself stories to cope. A drifter seeking shelter, a prank gone wrong. But the shadow's movement, the deliberate breach of my home felt too personal, too planned. They were here, breathing your air. I checked every lock, every window, but the fear lingered, a weight in my chest. The blizzard passed, leaving a silent world, but my home was no longer mine. Every creak, every gust of wind brought that cough back, and I wonder who they were, what they wanted, and if they're still out there waiting for another storm to return. The city glowed under a December sky, its lights promising warmth but hiding shadows that whispered of betrayal. I was 32, a Navy vet turned college student, my days consumed by lectures and late-night shifts, leaving little room for connection. Dating apps were my lifeline, a digital bridge to fleeting moments of intimacy. A week before Christmas, I matched with a woman my age, her profile a spark of hope in the winter chill. Her messages were witty, her smile radiant, and after days of banter, we agreed to meet at a bar not far from my place, a cozy spot where neon signs buzzed and glasses clinked. I stepped into that bar expecting a night of possibility, unaware I was walking into a trap woven with lies. She was even prettier in person, her laughter easy, her eyes catching the dim light like polished stones. We talked over drinks, the conversation flowing as if we'd known each other for years. She worked at the police station, not as an officer but something clerical, a receptionist maybe, her voice casual as she mentioned it. Then she dropped a detail that pricked my senses. She lived alone, her roommate gone for the holidays, and she hated it because her ex-boyfriend had a habit of stalking her. I shifted in my seat, unease creeping in, but she waved it off, calling. Him harmless, a nuisance at worst. Trust her, she seemed to say, and let it go. I nodded, pushing the warning aside, the alcohol softening my edges. An hour later, her hand brushed mine, and she suggested we head to her place, her voice low and inviting. The night felt alive, full of promise, but something in her smile didn't match her eyes. We drove to her house, a modest place on a quiet street, its windows dark against the winter night. She walked to the front door and pushed it open. No pause, just a casual step inside. The door was unlocked, wide open to the world, and my stomach twisted. She'd spoken of a stalker, yet left her home unguarded, her roommate absent, the house vulnerable. I followed her in, the air inside cool and heavy, scented with something sweet, maybe candles or perfume. She moved to the kitchen, tending to a cat weaving between her legs, its eyes glinting in the low light. My gaze fell on a bowl of cereal on the counter, its milk still cold to the touch, the flakes crisp, untouched. I asked who it belonged to, my voice sharper than I intended. She hesitated, her back to me, then said she'd eaten it before leaving for the bar, a quick snack. The lie hung between us, thin and fragile, and I knew it wasn't hers. Before I could press, she turned, her body close, her lips finding mine in a sudden dizzying kiss. "Take me to your room," she murmured, her voice a siren's call, pulling me deeper into the moment. I followed her down the hall, my mind clouded, the cereal and unlocked door nagging at the edges of my thoughts. In her bedroom, the air was warmer, the bed unmade, curtains framing a window that looked out to the dark backyard. I moved to close them, instinct urging privacy, but she stopped me, her hand on my arm. "Leave them open," she said, her tone light but firm. "Why? What's out there?" I pushed the question away, caught in the heat of her touch, the world narrowing to the space between us. 5 minutes later, her body tensed, her eyes fixed on the window, and she froze, a sharp intake of breath breaking the silence. I turned, my heart lurching, and saw a figure in a hoodie outside, his face obscured, staring through the glass. He vanished, his footsteps fading on the deck, but the air turned cold, heavy with threat. I sprang from the bed, adrenaline surging, and ran. To the front door, my hands checking the lock. It was still unlocked, inviting danger, mocking her story of a stalker. I secured it, my pulse racing, but the door shook under sudden, violent pounding, the force rattling the frame. I reached for the handle, ready to confront whoever was out. There, my Navy training kicking in, but she called out, her voice calm, almost bored. "Just come back to bed," she said, standing in the hallway, her expression unreadable. "He does this, he'll go away." I stared at her, disbelief turning to rage. "You know it's him, your ex?" She nodded, shrugging, as if it were nothing. The pounding moved to the side of the house, insistent, deliberate, and she didn't flinch, her eyes urging me to ignore it, to stay. "This isn't right, she's not scared. She's part of it." My mind raced, piecing together the fragments, unlocked door, cold cereal, open curtains, her calm in the face of danger. This is a setup, a trap, and I'm the target. I shouted at her, demanding answers, calling out the lies, but she offered none. Her responses vague, her face a mask of indifference. "If this is a robbery or some twisted game, I swear I'll fight you both," I said, my voice low, my fear hardening into resolve. I wasn't a hero, but 9 years in the Navy taught me to survive, and I wouldn't go down easy. Her silence was an answer, a confirmation of something sinister. I grabbed my phone, ordering an Uber in secret, keeping her talking, my back to the door, my jacket and shoes within reach. "Stay calm, keep her distracted, and get out." The pounding stopped, the house falling silent, but the quiet was worse, a predator's pause before the strike. The Uber's arrival lit up my phone, and I moved without warning, yanking the door open and sprinting to the car, my heart hammering. I glanced back, and she stood in the doorway, motionless, watching me go, her face blank, her eyes empty. I collapsed into the back seat, the driver speeding away, my breath ragged as I reported her profile on the app, my hands shaking. At the bar, I told the bartender, warning him in case she returned, my voice unsteady, my mind replaying the night. What was it? A robbery? A fetish? Or something darker? Something I'll never understand? I'm a vet, trained to face threats, yet I walked into that house blind, lured by a smile and a lie. That house, that woman, they're still out there, waiting for the next match, the next man to step through an unlocked door. The memory haunts me, a nightmare that blurs reality, its shadows clinging to my every step. The house promised safety, but its shadows whispered lies. In the spring of 2014, I was a young woman carving out a life abroad, chasing independence in a city far from home. Visiting family in southern France was a ritual, but I craved my own space away from their crowded house. Airbnb was my solution. A cheap private flat within walking distance, a sanctuary where I could breathe. I booked a ground floor apartment, its listing boasting a garden view and glowing reviews. It felt perfect until I stood before it, and the air turned sour. The neighborhood was quiet, a patchwork of charming homes and narrow streets. But the house felt off, its facade weathered, the garden overgrown. I arrived with my suitcase, the sun dipping low, and messaged the host. No reply. I waited, the minutes stretching, my patience fraying. An hour passed, the sky darkening, and still, no sign of him. A prickle of unease crept up my spine, the kind you ignore because you don't want to seem paranoid. I paced, my shoes scuffing the pavement, the street silent except for the distant hum of a car. Why isn't he here? A memory surfaced, a friend's story about an Airbnb host who vanished, leaving her stranded in a strange city. I pushed it away. He'll show up. Finally, headlights cut through the dusk, a motorcycle roaring to a stop. The man dismounted, his helmet under one arm, his face flushed. He was in his late 40s, maybe 50, with a disheveled beard and eyes that darted too quickly. Sorry, he said, his voice thick with an accent and something else. Alcohol, I realized, my stomach twisting. He admitted it, half laughing, saying he'd been drinking with friends and lost track of time. My unease deepened. Don't mention that in the review, yeah? He added, his smile forced. I nodded, not wanting to start trouble, but his casual confession, speeding on a highway, tipsy to meet me, felt like a crack in the facade. This isn't right. He led me to the house, his chatter relentless, filling the silence with stories I didn't ask for. The first red flag was the layout. The listing promised a standalone flat, but he revealed it was attached to his house, a small apartment on a lower level, accessible through the backyard. You've got your own space, he assured me, but his words felt hollow. Why wasn't this in the listing? We descended a set of outdoor stairs, the garden wild and tangled, the air heavy with damp earth. The flat was old, its walls stained, the furniture mismatched. A bathroom, a kitchenette, a bedroom, all mine, he said, but the door connecting to his house caught my eye, a silent threat in the dim light. It's locked, he said, waving it off. You won't need it. My skin crawled, but I nodded, clinging to the promise of privacy. He lingered too long, his questions prying. Where was I from? Why was I alone? I answered vaguely, my exhaustion battling my instinct to flee. He gave me his number, insisting WhatsApp was better than Airbnb's chat, and left, the door closing with a thud. I locked it, checking twice, and sank onto the bed, my suitcase still packed. The flat was quiet, but not the comforting kind. A silence that felt like it was listening. "I'm just tired," I told myself, but the unease grew, a whisper in my bones. I needed a shower, but the thought of undressing in this place with that door so close made my chest tight. What if he comes back? I was unpacking when a knock shattered the silence, followed by my name, spoken like he knew me. My heart stopped. Before I could respond, a key turned, and the connecting door swung open. The host stepped inside, his smile too wide, his excuse flimsy. He'd lost his phone, thought it might be here. He didn't ask to come in, didn't wait, just walked through my space like it was his. I stood, frozen, my voice caught in my throat. "I haven't seen it," I managed, but he kept moving, his eyes scanning the room, his presence filling the small space. He was too close, his voice too loud, talking over my protests. He checked corners, opened a drawer, then apologized, asking if I'd eaten, if I was okay. I nodded, my skin prickling, willing him to leave. He did, but the door's lock felt meaningless now. I sat on the bed, my breath shallow, the room closing. And he has a key. He can come back anytime. The shower felt impossible, the idea of being vulnerable, unbearable. I checked my phone, searching for hotels, but it was too late. Everything was booked or too far. I'm trapped. The silence returned, heavier, like the house was holding its breath. I moved to lock the bathroom door, a habit I never had when alone, but the need for barriers was overwhelming. As I turned to leave, my eyes caught the chairs in the bedroom, two of them, one with ropes tied around the armrests. My stomach dropped. The ropes were loose, not decorative, not structural, just there, coiled like snakes waiting. What are they for? My mind spiraled, images flashing, stories of travelers who vanished, of hosts with secrets, of rooms that weren't what they seemed. The ropes were a warning, a truth the house couldn't hide. I dragged a chair to the door, trying to wedge it under the handle, but the angle was wrong, the door swinging inward, mocking my efforts. It won't hold. I piled both chairs against it, the ropes dangling, their purpose a question I didn't want answered. If he comes back, I'll hear it. But the thought offered no comfort. I sat on the bed, my phone clutched tight, and called my brother. "Come get me," I whispered, my voice shaking. He didn't ask questions, just said he'd be there by midnight. I waited, every creak of the house a footstep, every shadow a threat. The ropes stared at me, their presence a scream in the silence. When my brother's car pulled up, I grabbed my suitcase and ran, not looking back, the house a dark shape in the rearview mirror. I stayed with him, safe, but the fear followed, a stain I couldn't wash out. What did he want? A mistake? A prank? Or something darker? I'll never know, but I see those ropes in my dreams, binding me to a night I can't escape. Lock your doors. Trust your instincts. Leave when it feels wrong. Because some places aren't homes, they're traps, and the danger knows you're there. It's 3 a.m., and I'm stepping into a car I think is my Uber, exhausted from a long shift, trusting the city's quiet streets. But the driver takes me somewhere else. A dark, abandoned building where the shadows are waiting. I was just trying to make it through a tough job in tough times, piecing together work during the early pandemic. This is the night I learned trust can lead you straight into danger. The world was strange then, the pandemic turning every day into a cautious routine. I worked in food service, but with restaurants shuttered, I took any job I could find. A friend hooked me up with a gig at a medical office, filing papers in the dead of night to avoid people. 3 a.m. starts, after the cleaning crew left. Keep safe, Avoid the crowds. I'd moved to this city a year ago, still learning its corners, and didn't trust the bus at that hour. So I booked a ride through an app, the screen promising a driver named Caleb, 10 minutes away. The cold bit at my fingers as I waited outside my apartment. The streets silent, the air heavy with the threat of snow. My eyes burned from lack of sleep, my body heavy, but the job paid, and I needed it. Look, there's a car. Headlights swung around the corner, a sedan easing to the curb. The driver leaned out, asking if I was waiting for Uber, his voice calm, unremarkable. I nodded, too tired to double-check, and climbed in, the door heavy under my hand. The car was plain, the seats worn, the air inside smelling of old coffee and leather. Settle in. It's just a ride. The driver looked ordinary, young, clean-cut, maybe like my brother. His eyes on the road, jazz playing softly. No red flags, nothing to worry about. My phone was low and his charger didn't fit, so I switched to airplane mode to save battery, figuring I'd need it later. Relax. You're on your way. The city blurred past, the streets empty, the ride's rhythm pulling me under. My head tipped back, the hum of the engine a lullaby, and I drifted off, the world fading to nothing. I stirred when the car stopped, the driver's voice distant, trying to rouse me. Wake up. You're here. My eyes opened, heavy, the dream slipping away. I mumbled thanks, embarrassed, grabbing my bag and stepping out, the cold air sharp against my face. The building loomed ahead, a low, dark shape, not the bright office I'd seen online. Notice this. It's wrong. The parking lot was cracked concrete, no signs, no lights, just shadows and the skeleton of a structure half-built, half-ruined. My stomach twisted, a cold prickle of doubt. I turned back, but the car was already pulling away, its taillights vanishing. Check your phone, find out where. I fumbled with my screen, but the signal was gone. The app stuck loading. The building stared down, its windows smashed or boarded, the entrance a black maw. This isn't right. Move. I pushed inside, the air stale, thick with dust and decay. My sneakers scuffed the floor, littered with debris, broken glass, tools, plastic sheets fluttering in the draft. Find a signal, get help. The lobby was a ruin, no lights, just my phone's fading glow cutting through the dark. I moved deeper, heart pounding, passing locked doors and shattered windows, the building a labyrinth of neglect. My phone flickered, still no bars, but I scrolled back to my texts, confirming the address I'd sent my friend. It matched. This was the place, but it couldn't be. Keep moving, there's another exit. I climbed a stairwell, the steps creaking, the air colder with each step, my breath visible in the chill. At the top, I paced, waving my phone, desperate, for a signal to call another ride to get out. Hear that, someone's below. A sound rose from the lower level, a shuffle of movement, deliberate and close. My body froze, the flashlight app barely lighting the floor. They're coming, hide. I backed against a beam, heart hammering, the darkness pressing in. The stairwell I'd used was the only way down, trapping me unless I found another. I crept along the wall, scanning for a second exit. My hands brushing rough concrete. Find a way out. Hurry. Footsteps climbed the stairs, slow and heavy, echoing in the hollow space. I ducked behind a pile of debris, my breath shallow, the cold biting my skin. Stay still. Don't let them see. A figure appeared at the top of the stairs, silhouetted against the faint light below. It was the driver, his face calm, his breathing loud, blocking the way down. He's here for you. Run! Panic surged, my mind blank but my body moving. Escape! Now! I spotted a door marked stairs, its frame warped and sprinted for it, shoving it open. The stairwell was a wreck, The steps collapsed into a jagged drop. Jump. It's your only chance. I launched myself, landing hard on the floor below, pain shooting through my legs, but nothing broke. Get up. Keep going. I stumbled forward, disoriented, the dark a maze of shapes. My phone was useless, its light too weak, but I ran. Hands outstretched, feeling for a door, a window, anything. Find the exit. They're close. A door loomed ahead, heavy and rusted. I pushed, the cold metal unyielding, until it gave way. Blinding, light flooding my eyes. Stop. Who's there? A voice cut through, sharp and commanding, ordering me to my knees, hands up. I staggered back, squinting, my mind racing. Another trap? The light shifted, revealing a police officer, his flashlight. Steady, his badge glinting. Stay calm, you're safe. I tried to explain, my words a jumble, the fear still choking me. He asked simple questions. My name, what I was doing, but I could barely answer. My eyes darting to the dark, expecting the driver. Tell him. Make him understand. He led me outside. The cold air a shock, and sat me in his squad car. The door open, the storm's edge in the air. I spilled the story, the ride, the building, the driver's return. My voice shaking, the truth sinking in. The officer said he'd been patrolling, spotting an idling car outside a condemned building. Realize this. He wasn't your Uber. My phone finally caught a signal, the app loading, notifications flooding in. My real driver, Caleb, had messaged. He'd arrived, couldn't find me, and canceled. Check the details. Know the truth. The car I'd taken wasn't his. The driver, a stranger who'd seen an opportunity. The officer took my description. Young, Caucasian, brown hair, goatee, sedan, sweatshirt. But it was too vague, too common. The car was gone by the time we looked. The driver vanished into the night. He's out there. He could try again. Gave a statement, my hands trembling, the reality settling like ice in my veins. I haven't used ride apps since, walking or driving myself, checking every detail twice. Stay vigilant. You can't forget. The memory of that building, the driver's calm face, the sound of his steps haunts me. Maybe he was a thief, a predator, or something worse. What if the police hadn't come? I told myself it was a one-time scam, but the way he returned, blocking the stairs, felt too deliberate, too planned. He knew what he was doing. My home feels less safe now. The locks checked nightly, the dark a constant reminder. Every late shift, every empty street, I see his face, hear his voice, and wonder if he's still out there waiting for another tired soul to climb into the wrong car. The foreign city shimmered under a veil of dusk, its streets alive with promise, but hiding a darkness that waited to swallow me whole. 2 weeks ago, I booked a cheap Airbnb in a country I'd never visited, drawn by the pulse of a concert I couldn't miss. As a goth at heart, I thrived on the eerie, the shadowed corners of life. But this trip was meant to be a quick escape, a single night, a bed, nothing more. The moment I landed, the world turned against me, my phone's data roaming dead, stranding me in a sea of unfamiliar signs and sounds. I found a cafe, its Wi-Fi a lifeline, and mapped my route to the Airbnb, my excitement for the concert battling, a growing unease. I stepped into that city expecting music and freedom, unaware I was walking into a house that felt like a grave. The Airbnb was a narrow, aging building on a quiet street, its facade weathered, as if it had stood too long against time. I arrived on time, my backpack heavy, and pressed the only bell, its chime faint and unanswered. 5 minutes passed, the silence stretching, and I pressed again, my patience thinning. No one came. I leaned down, peering through the mail slot, and my breath caught. The entrance was a ruin. A dusty couch blocking the way, furniture draped in tattered cloths. The air thick with neglect. It looked like an abandoned barn, not a home for guests. Is this the wrong place? My heart quickened, but I stayed. My love for old, creepy aesthetics clashing with a primal urge to leave. Just wait. It's fine. You're overthinking. As I straightened, a figure approached. An elderly man, his clothes unwashed, his breath reeking of stale cigarettes. "This the Airbnb?" I asked. He mumbled, nodding vaguely. And when I asked if he was Tim, the host, he grunted, "Yes," and pushed the door open. His eyes avoided mine, and I felt the house exhale, inviting me into its decay. The entrance was worse up close, the couch sagging under dust, the air heavy with mildew. A creaking staircase loomed ahead, its steps worn and uneven, leading into shadow. I followed him, each step a descent into something wrong, the house watching me with unseen eyes. He moved slowly, coughing, his presence a weight that made my skin crawl. The second floor was a maze of clutter, furniture piled haphazardly, draped in cloth, a curtain hanging in a corner, its folds hiding something I couldn't see. What's behind that? My pulse quickened, but he led me higher, to a third floor, hallway that felt like a horror film set. Cracks spiderwebbed the walls, faded paintings of stern faces stared down, crosses nailed beside them, their metal rusted. This isn't a home, it's a shrine to something forgotten. I tried to laugh it off, my goth side appreciating the vibe, but the neglect, the filth, was too much, too real. He showed me the bathroom, a nightmare of grime, with a gaping hole in, the bathtub and tiles peeling like dead skin. No way I'm showering here. The bedroom was better, the bed clean enough, but shelves lined with porcelain dolls stared at me, their glass eyes glinting in the dim light. They're just dolls, but why so many? I asked about Wi-Fi, desperate for a connection to the outside world, but he shook his head. No Wi-Fi. I asked about checkout time, and his answer chilled me. Doesn't matter. He shuffled off, climbing to a fourth floor that wasn't entirely dark, a faint glow suggesting life where there shouldn't be. Who's up there? What's he hiding? I stood in the bedroom, my phone useless, the silence pressing against me. This place isn't safe. You need to leave. I changed quickly, avoiding the bathroom, but a new horror stopped me cold. No locks, not on the bedroom, not on the bathroom. The doors hung loose, inviting intrusion. Anyone could walk in any time. My eyes fell on the bathroom. Shelf cluttered with half-used items. Shower gel, a toothbrush, toothpaste, a lash curler, all abandoned, as if their owners had fled. Who left these? Why are they still here? My mind spun, imagining guests before me, their belongings left. Like offerings, their fates unknown. No one left bad reviews. Why? Panic rose, my goth bravado crumbling under the weight of fear. This is a trap, a setup for something awful. I decided I wouldn't stay the night. My backpack too heavy to carry to the concert, but too precious to leave unguarded. I grabbed my essentials, slipping a folded paper under the door to check for tampering, and fled down the stairs, my heart pounding as a key turned in the front door. I froze, expecting the host's wife, as the listing mentioned a couple. Instead, middle-aged man stepped inside, his smile too bright, his voice too cheerful. "Hey, I'm Tim." My blood ran cold. If he's Tim, who was the other guy? I managed small talk, my voice shaking, and slipped out, the street a lifeline. The house lingered behind me, its windows like eyes watching me go. The concert was a blur of sound and light, a temporary escape, but exhaustion hit hard after. I couldn't face that house again, so I checked into a hostel, its grime tolerable, compared to the Airbnb's menace. It had Wi-Fi, a shower, and a lockable door. Luxuries I'd never take for granted again. I slept fitfully, dreaming of doll's eyes and a man who wasn't Tim, waiting in the dark. The next morning, the hostel kicked me out at 10 a.m., and I steeled myself to retrieve my bag. I approached the house, my heart in my throat, and peered. Through the mail slot, the old man was there, sprawled on the couch, his snores filling the air. He wasn't Tim, but he was still here, guarding the entrance like a sentinel. I crept inside, every step measured, praying he wouldn't wake. My room was untouched, the paper still under the door, a small relief in a sea of dread. I grabbed my bag and left, the house's weight lifting as I stepped into the daylight. Was I paranoid, or did I escape something unspeakable? The two Tims, the lockless doors, the abandoned items, they painted a picture of a place designed for harm, a perfect stage for assault or worse. That house is still out there, listed on Airbnb, waiting for the next guest to ring the bell. I love solo travel, but that night broke something in me, a shadow that lingers, whispering of doors that don't lock and hosts who aren't who they claim. The streetlights flickered, casting shadows that moved when we didn't. A couple of summers ago, my friends Alex, Drew, and I were clinging to the last days of freedom before school dragged us back. Our sleepovers were tradition, piles of junk, food, old movies, and laughter that echoed past midnight. That night at my house in our sleepy neighborhood, the air was thick with the hum of cicadas and the promise of adventure. We were kids, invincible, until the night showed us we weren't. It was Drew's idea, as always. Around 11:30 p.m., with my parents asleep upstairs, he leaned forward, his eyes glinting with mischief. "Let's sneak out," he said, his voice low. "Hit the park just for kicks." The park was a few blocks away, a place we'd roamed 100 times, swings, slides, a field where we'd played tag as kids. It felt harmless, a small rebellion to cap the summer. Alex grinned, already pulling on his sneakers. I hesitated, my stomach twisting, but their excitement was infectious. What's the worst that could happen? We slipped out the back door, the night air cool against my skin, and started walking, our whispers blending with the rustle of leaves. The neighborhood was quiet, a grid of tidy houses and manicured lawns, the kind of place where nothing ever happened. Streetlights buzzed overhead, their light pooling on the pavement, leaving gaps of darkness between. We joked as we walked, our voices too loud, our steps careless. Alex tossed a pebble into the bushes, laughing when it startled a cat. Drew recounted a story about sneaking into a movie theater, his hands waving for emphasis. The night felt ours, a playground we ruled. The park was a 10-minute walk, and we reached it without incident, the swings creaking in the breeze. We messed around, pushing each other too high, talking about crushes and classes, the future stretching out like the stars above. By 1 a.m., the air had grown colder, our breath visible in the dim light. "Time to head back," I said, rubbing my arms. We started the return trip, the streets as empty as before, the cicadas louder now, a chorus that filled the silence. But something felt different, like the night had eyes. We turned onto a long, narrow road lined with trees, their branches casting jagged shadows. That's when we saw it, a car parked at the far end near a stop sign, its engine idling. A black sedan, old and boxy, its tinted windows swallowing the light. It just sat there, unmoving, like it was waiting. Alex nudged me, his voice low. "Who parks like that at this hour?" I shrugged, my unease growing. But we kept walking, our steps slower now. Drew glanced back, his grin fading. "They're watching us," he whispered. I followed his gaze. A shape moved in the driver's seat, a flicker of motion behind the glass. My heart quickened, but I forced a laugh. "Probably just lost," I said, my voice thin. We passed the car, keeping our eyes forward, but the air felt heavy, charged with something I couldn't name. "They're not leaving." Halfway down the road, the engine roared, the sedan lurching forward. My stomach dropped. Alex laughed nervously. "They're just going home," he said, but his words fell flat. The car didn't pass us. It crept along. 20 feet behind, its headlights slicing through the dark. "They're following us." Drew's face paled, his eyes darting to mine. "This is bad," he muttered. We picked up our pace, our sneakers slapping the pavement, the sedan matching our speed. A memory hit me. A news story about kids chased in a quiet town, never seen again. I pushed it away, but the fear took root, sharp and cold. At the next intersection, we veered onto a side street, hoping the car would keep going. It didn't. The sedan turned with us, its tires screeching, closing the gap. "Run!" I shouted, adrenaline flooding my veins. We bolted, our breaths ragged, the world narrowing to the pound of our feet and the growl of the engine. The car sped up, its headlights washing over us, pinning us like prey. "They're not stopping." My lungs burned, my legs screaming, but fear drove me forward. Up ahead, a narrow alley sliced between two houses, barely wide enough for a person. "There!" I yelled, diving into the gap, Alex and Drew right behind. We pressed against the wall, the bricks cold and rough, our chests heaving. The car screeched to a halt at the alley's mouth, its engine idling like a predator's growl. I held my breath, my heart hammering, Drew's grip on my arm tight enough to bruise. A door opened, then another. Footsteps crunched on gravel, slow and deliberate. "They're coming." A voice cut through the dark, rough and commanding. "Come on out, we just want to talk." My blood froze. Alex's eyes were wide, his breath shallow. The second man muttered, his words low and angry, lost in the night. A flashlight beam swept the alley, grazing the wall above us, missing us by inches. I pressed closer to the bricks, my body trembling, the beam passing again. "They're so close." Drew's hand shook, Alex's face pale in the dim light. "The first," man grunted, his voice sharp. "They can't have gone far, check the other side." The footsteps retreated, the flashlight fading. We didn't move, didn't breathe, the silence deafening. Minutes crawled by, each second a lifetime. Then, the engine roared, the sedan backing out, its headlights sweeping the street. It turned and sped away, the sound fading into the night. We waited, frozen, until the silence returned, broken only by our ragged breaths. Are they gone? I peeked around the corner, the street empty, the sedan a ghost. We crept out, sticking to shadows, our eyes scanning every corner. The walk home was a blur, our steps silent, our nerves raw. We slipped inside, locking the door, and collapsed on the couch, the adrenaline draining away. We didn't sleep, didn't speak, just sat there, haunted by what we'd escaped. The next morning, a post on the neighborhood's community page chilled us. Someone had reported a black sedan prowling the streets late at night, its driver unknown. The police were looking into it, but no arrests, no answers. What did they want? The question lingers, a shadow in my mind. We were just kids, looking for fun, but the night taught us fear. Watch the shadows, trust your friends, run when it feels wrong. Because some things don't just pass by, they hunt, and they're closer than you think. The night was a shroud of secrets, the stars above too distant to pierce the darkness that clung to the edges of our town. My friends and I were thrill seekers, teenagers chasing the rush of exploring abandoned houses after school, slipping through broken windows to wander dusty rooms. The thrill was in the danger. The stories we'd tell later, but houses grew stale, their shadows too familiar. We wanted something bigger, something that would test our courage. And the old hospital at the town's edge called to us like a siren from a forgotten time. It was a relic from when the town was young, a place of healing turned to rot, condemned and left to decay in a corner no one dared develop. I'd just gotten my driver's license, my car a key to new horizons, and we planned our boldest adventure, yet to breach the hospital's walls under cover of night. We slipped out after midnight, hearts pounding, unaware we were stepping into a nightmare that would haunt us forever. I drove through sleeping streets, picking up my friends, their whispers charged with excitement and fear. The hospital loomed at the edge of civilization, its silhouette jagged against the moonless sky, a monolith of crumbling brick and shattered glass. We parked a block away, our flashlights cutting through the dark, and approached the front door, its hinges rusted but yielding easily. The air inside was thick with mildew, a damp weight that clung to our clothes, the scent of decay seeping into our lungs. This isn't just a building, it's a corpse left to fester. The corridors stretched endlessly, their walls peeling, ceilings sagging with water stains. Broken tiles crunched underfoot, and our flashlights danced over faded signs: trauma ward, ICU, burn unit, each a ghost of the lives once saved here. The silence was oppressive, broken only by our shallow breaths, the hospital watching us with unseen eyes. We moved deeper, our bravado fading with each step. I'd expected signs of life, squatters, graffiti, anything, but the hospital was empty, a void untouched by the desperate. The absence was worse than any presence, a warning that even the homeless shunned this place. I kept the thought to myself, not wanting to spook my friends, their faces already pale in the flashlight glow. Why would no one stay here? What's keeping them away? We explored for an hour, our footsteps echoing, the corridors a labyrinth of desolation. Every room was stripped bare, their emptiness a mockery of the hospital's past. Then we reached the top floor, the psych ward, its double doors looming like a gateway to hell. The air grew heavier, the silence deeper, and we hesitated, our flashlights trembling. As the oldest, I felt their eyes on me, urging me to lead. Push the door. Face it. You can't turn back now. I pressed against the doors and a stench hit me, a vile wave of rot and filth so intense it burned my throat. My friends gagged, their lights wavering, but we stood frozen, the smell a living thing that wrapped around us. This isn't natural. Something's here. Down the hallway, a faint yellow glow flickered from the last room on the right, the only light in the entire building, pulsing like a heartbeat. It's a fire, drawing us in, promising answers we don't want. I wanted to run, but my friends pushed me forward, their voices insistent, their fear mingling with mine. You can't abandon them, keep going. We crept down the hall, the stench growing unbearable, a mix of blood, waste, and something unnameable. The walls closed in, the air thick with dread, and I felt the hospital shift as if it were alive, guiding us to that room. At the doorway I stopped, my heart hammering, the light casting grotesque shadows on the walls. My friends urged me to look, their voices barely audible, and I forced myself to peer inside. What I saw seared itself into my soul. A padded cell, its walls soaked with blood and filth, bones of every size scattered across the floor like a butcher's refuse. In the center, a rusted metal drum burned, its flames licking a hole clawed. Through the ceiling, the fire's light revealing the horror in stark detail. This isn't a room. It's a slaughterhouse. I stumbled back, my mind reeling, but a new terror stopped me. A figure behind my friends, inches away, its form barely human. It was hairless, its skin scarred and bleeding, teeth jagged and yellow. eyes wild with hunger. Its ears were gone, its nose a ruin. A creature born from the hospital's decay. I screamed for my friends to run, my voice raw, and we bolted. The stairwell a blur as we fled. The creature's presence awaited our backs. We burst through an emergency exit, the night air a shock, and ran to my car, my hands shaking as I started the engine. We sped away, the hospital shrinking in the rear view, but its shadow clung to us. My friends were frantic, demanding answers, but when I described the creature, they didn't believe me, their fear turning to doubt. I dropped them off, warning them to stay away, my voice hollow, my mind trapped in that room. Months have passed, but the hospital haunts me, its stench lingering in my dreams, the creature's eyes watching from the dark. I can't tell the police, can't admit we trespassed, but something evil lives there, feeding on whatever strays too close. The bones, animal I hope, but fear whispers otherwise. That hospital is still out there, its doors open, its fire burning, waiting for the next fool to wander in. I'll never go back, but the nightmare follows, a truth too real to escape. The cornfields whispered secrets, but the night kept them hidden. Every summer when I was a kid, my brother Carter and I escaped to our grandparents' farm, a sprawling patch of earth where time seemed to pause. I was 11, Carter 13, and those weeks were our kingdom. Days spent leaping into hay piles, nights filled with fireflies and stories. But one night, under a moon too bright, our kingdom turned into a nightmare, and the farm showed us its teeth. It was midweek, the air heavy, with the scent of earth and corn. Carter, always the bold one, grew restless, his eyes glinting with a plan. "Let's sneak out," he whispered, his voice cutting through the hum of crickets outside our bedroom window. "Grab snacks at the gas station." The station was 2 miles down a dirt path, a trek we'd never made after dark. Grandpa's warning echoed in my mind, stay on the property at night. But Carter's grin was infectious, his confidence a shield against my doubts. What could go wrong? We waited until the house was still, the creak of Grandpa's snores our signal, and slipped out the back door, the cool air a shock against my skin. The path stretched before us, flanked by cornfields that swayed like silent giants. The moon hung low, its light silvering the stalks, casting shadows that danced and twisted. The farm felt different at night, alive in a way I couldn't name. Carter led the way, his flashlight beam bouncing, his steps sure. I trailed behind, my sneakers scuffing the dirt, my heart beating too fast. Something's watching, I thought, but shook it off, blaming the dark. We passed a scarecrow, its burlap face sagging, its straw arms limp. It stood upright, not on its cross, like it had climbed down. I nudged Carter, my voice small. "Creepy, huh?" He laughed, loud and sharp. "Scared of a sack of straw?" "Come." Halfway to the station, Carter froze, and I bumped into him, my complaint dying in my throat. He pointed, his hand trembling, to another scarecrow across the field. It was shorter, squat, and beside it stood a figure. A woman, old and hunched, her gray hair greasy, her dress tattered like it had been clawed apart. She was stroking the scarecrow's head, muttering, her hands moving like she was soothing a child. My legs went weak, my breath shallow. Who is she? Carter's jaw clenched, his bravado fading. I tugged his sleeve, whispering, "Let's go back." But he took a step forward, defiant. That's when she stopped, her head tilting like she heard us. Her face snapped toward us, pale as bone, her eyes sunken, her mouth twisting into a toothless grin. A cackle tore from her throat, sharp and wild, slicing through the night. She ran at us, her bare feet pounding the earth, her dress flapping like wings. Carter screamed, high and panicked, and spun around. We bolted, the path blurring beneath us, the cornfields closing in. Her footsteps echoed behind, relentless, the cackle chasing us like a storm. My chest burned, my legs jelly, but fear kept me moving. She's gaining. Carter fumbled with the flashlight, its beam jerking wildly, barely lighting our way. A story flashed in my mind. Grandma's tale of wanderers in the fields, stealing kids who strayed too far. I ran harder, tears stinging my eyes. We reached the house, Carter's hands shaking as he wrestled with the back door. I glanced back, expecting her claws on my neck, but the path was empty. The field stood silent, the moon mocking us with its calm. We stumbled inside, slamming the door, our gasps filling the kitchen. We're safe, I thought, but the relief was fragile, a thread ready to snap. Grandpa shuffled down in his robe, his face stern, but we didn't tell him about the woman. His anger was enough. He sent us to bed, the house creaking as he locked up. We're safe, I repeated, climbing under the covers, Carter across the room, his eyes wide in the dark. Then, a tap at the window stole my breath. My body froze, the sound sharp, deliberate. Tap, tap. Carter sat up, his face pale, our eyes locking in shared terror. The curtain swayed, a shadow moving behind it. I hissed at him to stay put, but Carter, always brave, crept toward the window, his hand trembling as he reached for the curtain. I wanted to scream, to stop him, but my voice was gone. He yanked it back, moonlight flooding the room, and my heart stopped. The woman stood outside, her nose pressed to the glass, her grin wider, more grotesque. Beside her was a man, his clothes ragged, stolen from a scarecrow, his face filthy, his finger tapping the glass. His grin matched hers, a mirror of madness. Realized with a sickening lurch the scarecrow we'd seen standing wasn't straw. It was him, watching us from the start. They cackled, the sound crawling into my bones, and we screamed, scrambling to our grandparents' room. By the time Grandpa stormed back, they were gone, the night empty. We spilled everything, our words tumbling over each other, the terror, too raw to hide. Grandma called the police, her hands shaking, while Grandpa checked the fields. The cops found nothing but a scarecrow, its clothes torn off, lying in the dirt. No footprints, no trace of the woman or her partner, just that stripped figure. Proof of something we couldn't explain. Years later, the farm is still there, but it's not home anymore. Every scarecrow I pass feels alive, its eyes following me, waiting for night. Carter and I don't talk about it, but I see it in his face when we visit. The fear that lingers, a scar from that summer. Stay inside, trust the light, listen to the warnings. Because some shadows don't just watch, they follow, and they know your name.